Hello, and welcome to Friends at the Table, an actual play podcast focused on critical world building, smart characterization, and fun interaction between good friends. I have no idea
Sure
what
is.
everyone's laughing about because...
Fun interaction between good friends.
Great. Good. Very professional. I'm Austin Walker. Joining me today, Ali Acampora.
Hello. Oh, you can find me now. I'm gonna do this quickly. There's
trying so hard to be normal that we fucked up the introduction.
Ellie_What's on Twitter. Hi. Hello.
Also joining us, Keith J. Carberry.
Hi, my name is Keith Carberry. You can find me on Twitter at Keith J. Carberry, and you can find the Let's Plays that I do at youtube.com/runbutton. We're doing a new marathon this month, I think.
You are. I just saw this on Twitter. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, we're going to do Final Fantasy games because I don't understand what Final Fantasy is, so we're going to do a lot of them.
Oh my god. I can't wait.
Dang.
Sylvia Clare.
Hi, I'm Sylvie. You can find me on Twitter at Sylvie Surfer and my other show on there at Emojidrome or wherever you get your podcasts.
Jack DeKeat.
Hi, I'm Jack. You can find me on Twitter at NotQuiteReal and buy any of the music featured on the show, including the full Partisan soundtrack at notquitereal.bandcamp.com.
Janine Hawkins.
I'm Janine. You can find me at Bleating Heart on Twitter.
Art Martinez-Tebbel.
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at Atebbel, and if you go to fangamer.com, you can order our new merch collection, and I assure you, they are going to send it to you eventually.
Okay. You should also note other merch stuff, right?
The Bluff City stuff is on clearance, 50% off Bluff City merch. There is not a lot of it if you want to go get it right now. And we didn't put the posters on clearance, right?
I don't know. You tell me.
Go to friendsathetable.shop and find out what's on clearance.
Whatever is there, you can get it.
It's a fun game. You gotta find out.
Finally, Andrew
The answer
Lee
is
Swan.
we did not.
What?
Ellie, that was the game.
You ruined the game. That's the game.
That's the game. I know what we're talking. I know what this is about. That's the game.
Yeah.
That's the game.
I was paying attention.
People are saying I'm quiet. I'm literally as loud as I can be without touching my mixer, and at that point, it will break. So I'm just going to yell all the way through this.
You didn't get your shit?
You could turn us all down.
I did that. That's what I did instead.
Okay.
So people should be able to just turn up everything. We're both in the yellow on OBS, so it is what it is. What else? What else? Andrew Lee Swan. Hi. Trey.
Hi, you can find me on Twitter at SwanDre3000.
Welcome, Trey. We're here to do the Partisan Post-Mortem. We got a billion questions. I think all set across all platforms, we probably broke 100. And that is a lot of questions. We are not going to go through all 100 questions. We did our best to figure out through lines and to hit as many different topics as we can. Also, we know these go long often, and it's been a long and tiring year, so we're going to do our best to just do our best here. What else? What else was I going to say? Here's a note up top. Normally, or in the past, we've ended postmortems with an announcement of the next season. I want to say up top, we are not doing that this time. COVID sucks, and it was very hard to make one season during COVID. The idea of having a trailer for the next season ready when we literally have only really kicked pre-production into full gear now it would have been impossible. It would have been a lot to put onto Jack and onto everybody else, onto me, to get things to where they needed to be. And so, yeah, heads up, don't expect a an end of stream reveal or anything.
We truly are making another season. Mm-hmm. And people will hear it, and it's very exciting. But we're not going to tell you anything about it today.
Yes, you'll hear about it soon enough. We have a time frame in mind, but please be patient with us as we continue to react to living under COVID. Speaking of, let me cough briefly. Let's get into questions because otherwise we'll be here forever. Paige writes in with a great opening question. Who do you think your PCs would get along with best from previous seasons?
I can only think of one person, and I thought about this a lot, and it's a hard one to answer. The person who was Cass's doctor, who was described
Coda
as
White Gloves.
Yeah, a genius. No, wait.
Yeah.
That was the military one, and then there was like the cute genius one.
Cass's doctor?
Are you thinking of Scene?
You think of Scene Sixheart, Audie's doctor.
I'm thinking of Audie's doctor.
Okay.
Maybe they would all hang out, the three of them. That would be great.
Scene's great. They are fantastic. Love them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Valence hanging out with Hadrian would be just both incisive and tragic at the same time.
Yeah. Who else? Janine, you highlighted this question. You have to answer it.
I think
You said fun and highlighted it.
I wanted to hear everyone else's answer.
You don't get
Fun
that
for other
that's not-
people.
yeah.
I think my honest answer is probably that I would really love to see Thisbe interact with with Pharaoh, but also with the Knolls, just like people who get to fucking be out in the woods kind of stuff.
Ooh, sure.
Like I would love for her to have that kind of time with people who are actually a little more rooted in the natural stuff, because we didn't really get any of that side of her. We got it within a framework of the natural contained within the unnatural. So it would have been really cool to, it would be cool to see her interact with people who are, I don't know that her and Pharaoh would necessarily get along, but I think it would be interesting.
It would be.
I
Anyone
think
else?
they'd get along. Pharaoh's very genial.
I feel like some of the worst excesses of villains in previous seasons, I'm thinking of people like Kitchikana. I don't think any of them would like Clementine, so I don't think that counts as like get along. But I am sure that we have encountered cruel or petty villains in previous seasons who would be able to make use of somebody like Clementine.
Oh, definitely.
Where it's like, oh, this person fucking sucks. I don't want to spend time with them, but
Yeah.
I might be able to
who
turn
would love
this
Clementine?
Who?
Adair would love Clementine.
100%.
Oh, they would have
so
a
good.
great time, or at least Adair would have a great time.
Do you think Adair would just run rings around Clementine, right? Would just be like, oh, I'm able to exploit this person for... What's the angle?
I mean, I think Clementine's wants are so transparent, and Adair is so much about kind of manipulating people and trying to figure that stuff out, that the transparency of those wants just means like, oh, she's like this and also she has power. That's fantastic.
A vast
Even
amount
minimal
of money.
power is, she's got money. She's got a room full of rings she has access to. That's great. I love that.
I love that. I'll take some of those. God.
Slightly fewer rings. Now.
Just slightly fewer rings.
Any other answers here, or should we keep on moving?
Arya Signet.
That's not
throw out a
from...
couple quick ones.
Yeah,
wait,
Neither of those are from
Yeah,
this
these
season.
two
Do you mean with sovereign immunity, or do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be really
Comma,
interesting.
Signet
Wow.
as
How-
the answer
Yeah.
to my the question from my perspective.
The power there is a lot. That's a lot of agency to put into a trio of characters.
Yeah.
3 incredibly fantastic teacups on a table.
Yeah. That's a book club I want to go to.
Oh my god.
It's a book club you want to go to until the book that they all three disagree on, and then it's like,
Oh, no,
Oh
that's...
yeah.
No, that's when
Yeah.
you most want to be there.
Yeah.
Feast of Patina
we get
Part
different
2.
things out of these.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Any
I
other-
misread this as like which of your two PCs will get along when I was thinking about it. So I was like, I don't know, I guess Aubrey. But actually thinking about that, I think Millie and Siege would get along okay.
Oh, yeah. I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. They both want out,
Yeah.
and
They're
both
both-
understand violence extremely well.
Yeah, and then very chill outside of it sometimes,
Yeah. Totally.
With those new rules, it'd be very funny to see Leap, Mako, and Gig.
Unbelievable.
Like
energy.
a whirling ball of chaos.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not a book club I want to be.
It's much closer to an episode of Jackass, I think, than a book club.
Gig is just like making sure no one gets hurt, desperately failing.
But also, like, what's the most dangerous thing you can do and not get hurt?
Yes.
I'm going to try and get this horse to kick me.
I think I saw that Jackass episode.
All right. Any other final thoughts here? And keep on moving. All right. Who wants to read this one from Paz?
I will.
All right. Thank you, Jack.
Paz says, thank you for such a fun season. I'd be interested in hearing Austin and the players' thoughts on the rapid evening side of the game. Did people's feelings toward the concept change once it was actually tested out in play? Did the prisoner and captor setup ultimately feel too restrictive or hard to roleplay within? There were moments when it felt like characters wanted to take a more drastic action, escape, or even directly attack Clem, such as the attempted escape in the very first arc, and Leap's hostility towards Clem at the end of the Icebreaker arc than they ultimately took. Was there any talk of abandoning this setup earlier, and did the limits of this squad setup affect the decision to move into the Kingdom game and merge parties? Thanks, looking forward to the next season, and then a smiley face with a little pointy nose.
Keith, you already said something.
Oh, I was just agreeing that, it was very early that we tried to escape. That was really
yes. It was right away. The big lesson for me, the thing that if I could go back and like snap my fingers and say one thing different, it would be, and this is like, I came into this assuming this and then did the open-hearted GM thing of not wanting to constrain people too much. But like we're talking about season 7 now, right? And we're talking about, you've heard me say this again and again, is I want there to be a certain sort of buy-in from every PC for season 7. And if I could go back to the beginning of Rapid Evening, the thing I would change is I want everyone to have a beam saber goal, why am I blanking on the name of this? A drive that is not about escaping, but is about something you could get from Kesh for working for them, even if you hate working for them. And we got that from like Sovereign Immunity. We got Sovereign Immunity wants to become the Sovereign Immunity of Clementine Kesh. But the only way you get a Dirty Dozen or Suicide Squad style thing to work is for them to hold something over you that isn't freedom, but is about getting someone off from a charge, for getting somebody else out of prison, freeing a colony that you were part of, giving you a great deal of wealth because that's what you really care about. And I think if I could go back and shift one thing, it would be to ask for Leap and for Millie to have something that was not freedom that they wanted. Not that they couldn't want freedom. And in some ways, it would have opened it up more for escape because then it wouldn't have been your drive. And that would have meant you didn't need to fill a drive clock to escape if you wanted to.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like my big lesson was be firmer about getting mechanical and narrative buy-in for the premise. But I didn't. But then we had it, and I think that those moments are really fun. I think those moments of like SI trying to talk people into staying was really good, and then everyone trying to like undercut Clem over the first 4 arcs was fun to watch.
It set a tone so fast, and that tone was as exciting and as communicative as it also required, I think, a lot of thought from all of us as to like how we were making these moves and where we wanted to go with them.
The thing
Go.
Okay. The word here that like I don't like in the question, did it feel where is it? Did it feel restricting or hard to RP within? It didn't almost the entire time feel restrictive. But it was like constantly on my mind that like the thing that I wanted to really do was sell that Leap was a prisoner, like, and without the Austin, you're talking about like wanting to get a buy-in from us, like something that would keep us in the group even though we really didn't want to, and without that it wouldn't have felt right for me to just like not try and escape,
right,
or at least like push back against even being there.
And sometimes you don't even get to the thing that would have fit for a while. Like, imagine if we'd come in with the idea that there was an Equiax colony or an Equiax settlement on the planet somewhere that needed help. That could have been a really good way to align leap towards, fuck this, but this could be a thing I can do that I want to happen. And this is one of the things about actual play. Is sometimes you get the good idea 6 weeks, 7 weeks in, and you're like, well, shit.
And then, on the other hand, like, would that have strengthened parts of the season overall? Maybe, but also would it have that first arc for me was so much fun, and so would we have gotten the immediate escape plan with that? Probably not. So it's sort of like can't change it, and I also couldn't say if that would have been better or worse. But it did occupy a lot of like my time thinking about the season, which is like, how do I be part of the group and also not want to be part of the group, especially having come off Pharaoh, where that was like really exhausting.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah.
Art, you starting to say something here too?
Yeah, I've said this in a little bit of behind the scenes content, of Patreon content, but like I found it hard to get my footing this season because of this. That like, and the way I've come to describe it in turn to myself recently is that like I had a little bit of Sting booking.
Sting the wrestler.
Sting the wrestler.
Not the musician.
Which is a thing you need to know about the wrestler Sting, is that he was the main babyface in WCW for a good long while. And the main villain in WCW was Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen. And several times there would be like a plot where the Four Horsemen would pretend to have like a problem, and Sting would team up with one of them, and then inevitably betray Sting. And Sting just looks like a moron. Because Sting fell for this very obvious plot of the dastardly villain
kicking
Ric Flair,
the football,
who no one should ever trust. And so the problem ends up with Sovereign Immunity, that like Sovereign Immunity is supposed to be the savvy political maneuverer who is just tricked all the time by known moron Clementine Cash. You know?
Yes.
And it was hard to like wrangle all those character elements into a forward moving thing.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, right? Because like I think Clementine experienced something fairly similar, which is that I really wanted to be honest to the horror of the power dynamics of that group of, you know, oh, this is someone leading a squad of prisoners, basically entirely against their will for their own ends. And to be honest about the way that Kesh as an organization is able to wield power. But I really didn't want to like stop people from rolling. I mean, the simplest way to put this is like Clementine would have killed someone really early in that season. If
we floated that idea even before the show started about like, do we want to open this with Clem showing what the power is by killing a major M, but like Ao Rook just getting shot in episode 1, right?
Yeah,
and
it's
it
so
felt
hard.
Too hard out the gate. I think you managed to communicate Clem as a terrible person and a warden of prisoners and a manipulative, frankly, pretty evil person out the gate without needing that sort of dramatic. What we got instead was you killing a person in cold blood because of a mission, right? You killed the scientist instead, and that wasn't planned. I mean, I gave you that secondary objective to see if Clem would go there, and you did go there in such a way that was like very indicative of how much Clem was willing to actually get her hands dirty on top of wielding other people like weapons.
Yeah, where it's like, I think there is a version of this season where if it's so rough, right? Where it's like, if we were making this as a television show and we were just writing scripts, would Clem be more competent and more frightening in her competency? The answer is like, I don't know. I think I keep coming back to Clementine as thinking of like the amateurish plotter in Crusader Kings 2, which is a character who it's a trait that means that a character has quite a low espionage skill, but has a very high propensity to like try and do espionage. And it leads to these incredible Crusader Kings characters where you have someone just like making wild swings that they have no capacity to deliver on. But in some way, they're almost like this when you encounter a really dangerous amateurish plotter, they're this weird dynamo, because you're like, oh fucking hell, what are they? It's very likely that this isn't going to work, but if it does work, like Apostolos' front line is absolutely fucked or something. So there would be the temptation, right, to just make Clementine way more competent and way more scary. But in the same way that Art was talking about trying to balance being like a savvy revolutionary that was constantly hamstrung by an idiot, I think Clementine was trying to balance being someone that is frightening and capable at wielding power while not wanting to like slam doors shut for other players or for Clementine or for the kind of story we want to tell, right? Like, This is a story about revolution, so it's like, I don't want things to break good for Clementine generally.
Sylvia, I'm curious, as the one person here who has not talked about this quite yet.
I'm kind of like, I'm just thinking about like what you said about if we had gone back and done things like had different drives not related to like freedom, and I feel like that would have changed the way I played Millie like so entirely. Because like if I look at just the like story I had for her at the beginning, the way I like before like I had even sort of landed on the claw your way out drive, the other one I had was like get revenge on glory,
right?
And like that sort of became a thing in parts, but like I kind of, one of my favorite things about Millie's story is that it doesn't end up being a revenge story.
Totally.
For the most part. And like, I don't know, I think that having to sort of play within the confines of the like situation that we've been given really helped me, in sort of like the opposite way of what I described, really helped me figure out her like right away. Because like it's, oh, you're someone who has had to be in captivity in some way or another her entire life. And like that immediately just like clicks everything into place. Or if not everything, like at least the basic stuff that ended up filling out the rest of her character.
Yeah, totally. And I think we got really great resolution there with where Millie ends up at the end of everything in a really good. I mean, I think everyone in the Rapid Evening ends up in a really interesting place by the end of that. I think everyone in Partisan ends up in a really interesting place. So I guess when I say like, oh, if I could go back, I would do blank, I don't mean, and because I didn't, it was ruined. I think everyone did such a good job with what we had that I'm so happy with where everyone ended up. So, all right, let's keep moving. Sylvie, can you actually read this next one here?
Yeah, for sure. This is from Gary, and Gary asks, what was your favorite moment where a PC looked sick as shit? I do have this, if I can just
Please,
go
just jump
ahead.
into it, please.
Remember the mission we had on the Prophet's Path? There's the moment, I can't remember his name, the fucking hot Oscar Isaac guy.
Callister Drive,
like,
Callister.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
There's a moment where like I think my mech is just like beat to shit and I have to get out. Oh no, I got out to shoot someone with my sniper rifle, and there's a moment where I'm staring down his mech on foot with the sniper rifle and he just backs off, and I think that is an underrated Millie moment.
Absolutely. That moment also has that mission also has the Clem on foot with the mechs approaching through like the sandstorm moment, which I could conceptualize in my head so well, and then I saw people do fan art of it, and I was like, "Yep, that's it, nailed it, 100%."
That mission ruled.
Yeah, Beam Saber led us to make lots of really good missions in a way that are so memorable, and I love past seasons. But in terms of giving me as a GM the ability to be like, here's a cool forest mission, here's a cool snow mission, here's, like, it just felt so good to play in that space. And I hope that enabled a bunch of these kind of like incredible sick as shit moments, because I have them for every character. Everyone had a moment where they had the spotlight in that way. But
Thisbe riding the blue channel was really good at the end.
Yeah.
Thisbe basically being the mounted gun of a ship. Something I was able to visualize really well. Really, anytime Millie took action was great. I had so much fun playing that ridiculous scramble in the Booba Tanker mission where Millie and Kalar are teamed up as a unit in like this ruined building and just keep like stumbling from one crisis into another, but like pulling out of each one in interesting ways. Like you were talking
that's
about
maybe the best combat encounter in Friends at the Table.
It was so much fun. And playing with Sylvie in that scene was just the best, where it was like Millie was such a great character to interact with, and it was such a wonderful space to like find my feet with Kalar, to have all these moments kind of cascading. And it's like, how are you going to react to this? How is Millie going to react to that? I had a great time playing that scene. Turns out shooting people accidentally. Yes.
that mission was so good that was the moment where I was like, well, we can't end the season in Beam Saber because I can't. We got blood out of the stone. Like, not that Beam Saber is a stone. Beam Saber is an incredible gift to us. But we got so much out of it in that mission, from the sort of like rolling successes to the my favorite use of arrival. We can make a move at any time with the arrival of Laurel, aka the cast clone.
Wonderful.
To the big final huge roll where everyone had to collaborate to get as many dice as possible to try to get this one big home run swing. And it's like, we're not going to get another home run swing. We got it. We got the biggest home run swing we could get. I have to start thinking about how to end this season in something else, because if we try to recapture this tension, we're just not going to get to this high again, because it was so mechanically tight and good. For sure.
If I can give myself a moment from that one, because it was very new playing me and Kalar. It was like our first mission with those characters, right? Figuring out that Phrygian could turn into the divine energy.
Yeah, the energy super gun, the gun that the
so good.
Other person in the other Millie mech had. The stray dog, Mark II or whatever. That moment, realizing you were about to use that move, was like, I marked out so hard. I was so excited. It was so good.
SI with the scythe is always good. Anytime SI had his scythe.
Yeah. I really like Thisbe.
Yeah, the motion stuff was good.
All the motion stuff I think is fun, right? For sure. I really like Thisbe in the statuary, beating the shit out of around the Deo statues is very fun. God. I'm trying to think of other big ones. Obviously, the big Valence moment, the big Valence moment is the sickest shit is buried under tragedy.
Being sad.
But it did look sick as shit, didn't it? And then I think for Brown is also Orzen for me. The moment of all of the stuff around these much more mobile mechs, and Brown being in this kind of not that your mech wasn't maneuverable, but it didn't fly, and suddenly there are these dive bombers and violin grappling hook mechs fucking with you, and you're on the roof trying to deal with that by launching whatever is in your missile pods or your projectile pods. Was really fun too.
Yeah.
Also,
I was trying to think.
Oh, go ahead.
I was trying to think of the question because I was like, Brown did a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, I don't know that you could call any of those things cool, because it was just always like that
moment where they dove off with Thisbe when Thisbe was deactivated.
Yeah, the dive
was
off
good.
icebreaker into the ocean with Thisbe.
Yeah.
That's sick as shit. Yeah.
Yeah. I
was
think
that was during the flag fight?
Yes. That was against Morning Bride?
It was against Morning Bride, correct. Morning Bride and Courage.
What's the name of that divine?
Courage.
Yeah,
Courage.
Courage.
Which first showed up in Road to Partisan. That's where Courage first showed up, and was a flying banner in a similar way. Yeah.
God, can we just tell YouTube that people are allowed to say shit in our chat, for Christ's sake?
I mean, that's probably a setting somewhere, right? I don't know where it is.
Yeah, it's in preferences.
Yeah, if someone can dig it there, that'd be great. But all right, do you want to keep moving? Next question here.
Sure.
Dre, can you read this since you said sure?
Yeah. This is from Wayne and Morgan. The music this season has been chock full of fantastic sounds, and I'm curious how you found or created these sounds. Do you tend to stumble upon a sound you like and build a composition around it, or do you try to find or generate a particular sound that you already have in mind? I'd be curious to hear more about your process. As an amateur composer who has been daunted by the massive world of synths and electronic sounds many times before, I'd also be curious what your learning process has been like and if you have any learning resources to recommend. How did you balance the desire to create music with a harsh mechanical tone and the need for it to sound musical and be able to be talked over?
It's a really good question. I think that it's been really fun making this kind of what do you call it, Austin? The Divine Trilogy?
The Divine Cycle is what we've started.
The Divine
calling
Cycle.
It. Yeah.
Since it is probably no longer a trilogy. Yeah, where it's like in the first one, it was all pianos and barely any synths. And then the second one, I wanted to do something really warm. And even as I was making Twilight Mirage, I knew that I wanted the third season to be... Because I think already we were talking about making a war season, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. From the jump, right?
We wanted to make like a war movie or something. And so even as we were finishing Twilight Mirage, I was like, oh, I know what the next thing is, and it is... And it's something really harsh. And so I started looking at atonal stuff or less melodically focused stuff like Ryuichi Sakamoto. And I also started looking at just like classic 90s industrial music at Trent Reznor and the Nine Inch Nails. As is it David Lynch introduces them as the Nine Inch Nails?
I think that's correct.
Which I think is really good. And also looking at more modern industrial stuff and the sounds of PC music and sounds that are deliberately overwhelming or harsh or uncomfortable or miserable. And that was so exciting to prep for, because I was just like coming off spring where I was trying to write beautiful melodies and pretty harmonies. It was so exciting to be like, all right, this is going to be miserable music, and I want to try and make it exciting or have a swagger or whatever. So I started by looking at synthesizers that I suspected would have those characteristics. There are so many different digital and real-world synth manufacturers that sort of specialize in particular sounds, and so right off the bat, I was able to be like, I'm probably going to look at a synth called Massive, and I'm probably going to look at a synth called Reactor with a K, because it's like sick as shit, spelled with a K.
That's cool, not doubt.
Yeah, that is cool, not doubt. And then there were additional criteria where I was like, I don't really want to use an arpeggiator, which is a kind of synthesizer that produces very rapid patterns of notes like Tron or Daft Punk, or when you think of like the Stranger Things sound. I didn't really want to use an arpeggiator because I can't use them very well. I don't really know how to use them very well. And I didn't really want to use a sequencer for the same reason, which is sort of where you plot things out on a graph and the music sort of plays itself as it moves down that graph. So I wanted a synthesizer I could just play straight into my program using a MIDI keyboard. And then it was just a case of going really slowly through loads and loads of different... This is my least favorite bit of composing, is it's because you just open a list of instruments, and for every one you find, there are like 35 that don't work. You play 3 notes and you're like, oh, that's crap or whatever. But I'm like, oh, fine, I want a bass that feels really heavy, or I want I wanted Chrysanth synths to sound like they were needles, to sound something very piercing or jagged. And so you just go down this list being like, is this it? Nope. Is this it? Nope. Is this it? Until you get close to one when you start turning knobs. And I'm not familiar enough with synthesizers to really know what the knobs do. So when I got something that I liked, I would just start turning the knobs on the screen and being like, does that get me closer or further away from what I picture in my head? And you know, I ended up at a point where by about the halfway point of the season, I had like 13 or 14 different synths that I had saved. So these were presets that I could call up instantly. And from that point, I pretty much didn't look for new sounds. I have this massive bass. I have these horrible distorted bells. I have various screaming or distorted sounds. I have 2 or 3 different drum sets. And from that point, it's just much more like it is in a regular season, where I'm like, okay, Austin and Ali send me the file. I listen through to it a lot of times. We talk about what we think is going to work here. I'll play a riff that won't.
Things like you'll send us a 20-second riff or like a 20-second demo of like, is this
It's usually
the
really
direction?
ugly, especially this season, right? Because it's just like
yeah.
there are just like synths that are audibly glitching or breaking, or stuff hasn't been like snapped to beats or whatever.
There were times when you'd be like, I lost it. I broke it the right way, and I can't break it the same way again.
So that kind of whining drone that begins the main theme, I managed to record once for a demo I sent Austin 1.5 years ago, and I lost the synth for that. Yep. So every single time that sound appears in the soundtrack, and it does like 3 or 4 times, I pulled it from the MP3 file.
That's real shit. That's Partisan, baby, right there. Yeah. You don't have the original tool set. You just have a copy of a copy, and you're just dropping it in. And
it gets increasingly deep fried.
That felt like a year of Austin having to copy paste every time you need to use the letter
E or something.
Totally. And I'll say, like, even going back to the beginning, Jack, just to like get back to that first part of this question of like, how do you find something that isn't too abrasive? I just want to underscore how much attention you put into that question of how do we make a show that's aggressive sounding that isn't physically painful to listen to. We went. You must have iterated on the main theme. I mean, you go back to the first time we had a call about what the main theme was, and we were like listening to engine noises and stuff like that. You sent me like 4 demos, and 3 of them you're like, I think this is too harsh. I think this will hurt people's ears too much. And we just kind of dialed it in from there, and like the amount of attention you put to that, but then also clearly to big things like motions, sound, which like should be scary and upsetting, but also shouldn't override the dialogue of any given scene where it's dropped into. I just think you did a really, really good job of managing to be scary without being distracting, and that's really hard to do.
Thank you. I mean, I think that like the thing and I think this is because I have such a good time working with you and Ali, where it's like the thing I'm most excited about is people being able to listen to the show and hear the good storytelling that we're doing. So like I cut so many synths that I thought were cool that just either ate through the audio or didn't sound very nice. Like there's a drum set that I have that its cymbals just obliterate the top end of anything we put it into, to the point where it is just horrible to listen to. But I loved this drum set so much that I gave it double duty on some tracks. I played the kick drum and the snares of this massive, unworkable drum kit and handed the cymbals off to a more palatable kit that wouldn't destroy the top end. But I do think I have no interest in making music that is so harsh that it is actively painful to listen to, or that is so harsh that it stops us telling the stories that we want to tell. So on some level, that balance was quite easy.
Yeah, I also think there's a key distinction between certain types of tracks. So the Black Century track, God, what's the name of that track? This is the thing, is we use those ideograms this year. I don't remember any titles because I'm bad at this. But whatever the
it's overwhelming and frustrating. Sick. That's what we wanted.
Perfect. But like that track is just terrifying. It like goes really hard, but it's very frightening versus
like a slow march, right?
Versus the finale theme, where I think it sounds like a Vince Staples beat, and that's super important in a game that was about the slippage between fighting a revolution that you believe in and slipping into the logic of empire and thinking, actually, doesn't it just feel good to be aggressive? And capturing that in that song was so important to me, and you nailed it.
My favorite thing to do is make music that's sarcastic, or is music that is saying what you are hearing in the scene is not actually quite what. So the first time they have the big Millennium Break conference aboard Icebreaker, I had the closest that I got to this kind of triumphant theme, which is played on this electric piano. It's this really nice little theme, and then it keeps showing up more and more towards the finale, played over characters who you're like, do they need this theme? Why are they playing the theme here? This doesn't sound right. And like, I wanted to like, as Sovereign Immunity dies, the music slips into the major key, kind of, and I wanted listeners to be confused, to be like, why is this happening now?
Well, you
this
broke
doesn't
certain
sound
rules
like
around
it's
not
supposed
rules,
to go.
but like you would sometimes start with a character motif, right, or a faction motif, but then that would find its way into referencing something else, and that draws a connective line between the two of them in a way that you said sarcastic or somehow jarring, which I really loved.
And sometimes it's not subtle, and sometimes it is not meant to speak directly to. For example, like we give Gucci Chrysant's theme by the end, and like that's this is some real like there is the subtext here is fairly clear, and Motion's theme gets spread all over the place to the point where I stopped thinking of it as Motion's theme and started thinking of it as like something awful has been happening for a long time and hasn't been allowed to stop. Where it's like, it's so much less than Hyron, where it's like, oh, Samot has a theme, or in Twilight Mirage, where it's like, oh, this is,
every character has a theme because you made
every character has their own
themes.
In Partisan, it was just much more like, oh, this is a theme for a miserable thing that's kept going, or this is a theme for people getting organized, or this is a theme for whatever, and that gave me a bit more flexibility while trying to make music during COVID, and I think we did that during all aspects of the show.
Oh yeah, big time. All right, let's keep moving. This next one, can you read this, Janine? From Saint.
Sure. Yeah. It seems like every player swung for the fences in terms of the types of risk they were willing to take, were willing to put their characters through. Was this a conscious decision? Did something Beam Saber encouraged both? As an extension, was there a particular mindset y'all went in with in terms of how your characters would be played?
I think go ahead, Sylvia.
I just have like kind of a quick and easy answer to this, which is like, we wanted to tell a war story and people die in those. So if it happened, I would have been fine with it, like that just enabled me to risk things more, as opposed to like other seasons where it felt like I wanted Millie to get through it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like, I trusted us to, be able to tell a compelling story if one of the PCs died in the middle, and we did do that.
We managed to do it.
So like, I don't know. It I think also in general, it comes from just years of doing this at this point.
I don't think we were ever as comfortable with the system as we were mechanically, maybe as Beam Saber in the middle of it. Maybe that's not true. Maybe Dungeon World by the end, but y'all understood this system and pushed it as hard as you could maybe there's like one or two types of thing you didn't do super often. We definitely got some like frankly backseat gamey emails that are like, why didn't the party do blank? And it's like, because you're doing actual play and you don't always have the book in your mind all the way. But I think that things like that big motion fight really indicate the ways in which you were all like committed to pushing on the system as hard as you fucking could.
Yeah, and I think like with Forged in the Dark stuff, like having played a few different variations of it now, like we've always had the best results when we're going at a 10, like when you're pushing it like the envelope all the way.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I'm hoping I can keep this energy for the rest of the show. I'm hoping this isn't a Partisan exclusive thing.
Yeah, totally. Janine, I had you read this because I think you came in with the most like explicit, I'm going to swing at the fences like as hard as I can.
And it was because when we had played Forged in the Dark games before, I had not had fun.
Right.
I like explicitly, I respected them. I respected what they were going for, but I had experiences where just like, first, second, and third impressions were a little bit rough. Like I would have bad dice rolls, and it just felt, we would be moving from a system that maybe I had felt more attached to my character in, and like various reasons why, I kind of had a bit of a grudge, I guess. So I was like, if we're going to be doing this, if we're going to be playing this for an extended period of time, I need to find a way to make this work for me. And like, what I need to figure out, like, am I doing something wrong here? Or am I doing something that is maybe making this a bit less fun? And the answer is that, like, I can be a really conservative player, in terms of like, I'm always like very aware of my resources. I'm very aware of sometimes too aware of like what the limits of a move should be and things like that. And I will sometimes even I'll argue against myself in some cases, like, well, I don't think I should be able to do that, or the other side of things of like, if I'm very sure I should do something, I don't know. I can get really into the weeds there, is my point. And I think that approaching sort of games in this network, in this mold, with that kind of approach can make them very not fun, because there is so much risk. And if the thing you're worried about is just risk in general, it feels really oppressive to play under that. But you have to realize, and like for me, the thing was like, I have to play harder because the risk exists for you to take it. And they wouldn't give you, like, the way that risk is balanced, it is balanced so that you can take on quite a lot of it, and like you can experience quite a lot of consequence for taking on those risks. That's the point. So if you're the player who is always trying to hyper manage your risk, like, you're gonna have a bad time unless you change tact. So I changed tact and had a better time with it. It's still not like my favorite system, but I definitely didn't chafe against it the way that I have in the past, where like it used to be that every time we were playing in one of these systems, it really got under my skin. And this time around, I did eventually just stop really even thinking about it in that way.
Totally.
Yeah.
I would say the other character who did this was Leap, who was literally built to be as lean into desperate situations as possible. They're like, Keith, you also do that generally speaking with characters, but I think never as successfully. Another sick as shit moment is Leap getting out of your mech and running across the battlefield and like jumping extremely far and high during the motion fight. I totally
forgot about that. The first motion fight.
Yeah, it was very good for that. But like, you also were just playing as hard as possible.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do try to do that. It keeps me interested. It keeps me focused to do that. But then I think I've mentioned this before. Maybe it was during a tips, or maybe it was during like some early season thing. But when we were at Gen Con, do you remember the thing that you said about?
I fucked up the saying.
Like,
the saying
make your car explode. Yeah,
that's what I said. Make your car explode. The saying is play your character like a stolen car. What I said was play your character like you're driving a stolen car. What I said was play your character like you're crashing a stolen car.
Right.
Which, honestly, it works.
What a great misquote. Yeah. What a consequential misquote.
So I did that. I tried to do that for that episode. For that Gen Con thing.
Yeah. That Gen Con game was like when I knew we would be good, because we ran a full fucking Blades game in like 2.5 hours or something, which we had never managed to do in Scum and Villainy or in Blades in the Dark. And I was like, okay, I can run shorter scores. So that Gen Con game was like huge confidence boost. Anyway, sorry, continue.
And so I had so much fun during that Gen Con game that I was just like, I'm just going to do that as a character, like that. My character will be. The tools are here. I can make a character whose job it is to crash a stolen car.
Literally, that is what Leap did before being arrested, was crash space cars and other space cars and rob them.
Literally crash. Yeah, the mech was designed to crash into things.
Yeah. You also stole that car.
Did I steal a car?
In the first mission, you do steal a car.
I stole a car. Yeah. See, there, I took it really literally. And then I was like worried about losing that when we switched over to Phrygian, and so that first session I was just like, well, let me just make sure I'm still doing that.
And you did. Yeah, totally.
And I did. Yeah, and we all almost died.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to underscore again what Sylvie said at the top, which is like, this was a war story. I think we all did have a conscious conversation at the top. But actually, let's just jump into the next question. Does anyone else have anything here before we move on? We can always come back to these ideas in future questions. So, but really quick, Jack, can you read this question from Jay?
Yes, my microphone was muted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me just find this here. Jay says, for Keith, When/how did you decide to leave Leap behind? Dre, was Valence's death something that you guys had planned, or was it just the luck of the dice?
And so I cue this up to, again, underscore the war story element around character death and stuff. So, but yeah, Keith and Dre, what do you think about these?
This goes back to like the first question, I think, about, or maybe the second question about like to where we were talking about like taking seriously the fiction of like warden prisoner dynamic. Mm-hmm. Where during the Kingdom game, it started to become harder to manage, and it also started to feel like the result of doing what I thought was taking the fiction seriously was like literally hampering the game. And so I was just like, if I just switch characters, it'll be fine. There was also a second part of it where, like, I feel like a lot of my characters get more depressing as they go, and so there was part of me where I was like, I have the points here to do like a good ending for Leap, but then also I had seen a lot of I had seen people saying, you know how you see people say stuff.
I do know this.
I saw people wondering when the sad turn was going to come for Leap, and I didn't want Leap to have a sad turn because Leap started off as a prisoner. It was sad. It was not subtext. It was just the text of the thing for me was that Leap is a prisoner, wants to get out, can't escape, and so I didn't want to like give it a second thing at the end where it's like, oh, now here's the real tragedy, because I felt like the real tragedy was the first half of the season.
Yeah.
So
get Leap out, let Leap go, let Leap live.
Yeah.
Dre, do you want to talk about Valence's last stand?
Yeah, it was absolutely luck of the dice. It was not planned whatsoever.
We had no idea. It was like a boy threw us into chaos.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was basically. We were reaching the end. It was late, and you basically said, like, I don't want this to be a dice thing. I want you to make the decision. Like, you all can take out Chrysanth, but it's going to mean somebody like has to stay, or maybe it was specifically Valence.
Yeah,
you have to stay behind to make it happen.
And we said you could. I think I did say you could play it out after. You could play out the scenario. And we could roll dice. We can come back next week. We can fight it out and see if maybe you can take out Chrysanth in the fight, and maybe all of you get away. But everyone was beat to shit because that mission broke so bad, and so I gave that very clear offer of like you could do a 1-for-1 or more than a 1-for-1 trade, because you also got to destroy and then steal the remaining eyes of the exemplar, right? So
yeah, we absolutely had that as an out. I remember that really clearly being a choice of like, you know, we have this resource, we could get out of this with Valence. Like there were a lot of options there.
Totally.
In that way.
Yeah, it was the choice, and I think even after we made the choice, you know, it was very much an ongoing conversation of like, are we still okay with this?
Yes.
You know, does this still feel right? Yeah. But no, I mean, I think once it happened, I never really, like, I did think about it, but it was never really like, no, this felt like the right choice.
And it was Art, I think, who smartly said, before we hang up tonight, do we want to play it out and see how it feels? Because it let us keep the momentum and the tone of that mission in your play in a way that I think helped underscore the place we were actually at in that mission. Whereas I think, and I'm glad we did then still open up the door to say, hey, we can always come back and re-record. We can always throw this out. We can retcon it. I don't care. I want you to be happy and feel safe with the decisions that you're making as a storyteller here. And so you always had that opportunity, but I'm so glad we did play it out and see how it went and then go a different direction. I mean, frankly, we did that twice this season. It's not on this question because how would anyone know to ask this? But like, sovereign immunity died in this season briefly, right? during the Kingdom game.
Yeah,
and we
walked it back
because it felt wrong.
Yeah, woke up the next day. We're like, nope,
that's not it. We slept on it. It felt like the momentum of the table broke against the story the wrong way. And so yeah, it's in some ways it's why the idea of like, did you plan it or was it the luck of the dice doesn't really tell the whole story, because there is always safety mechanisms at play. There's always the feeling that like, I mean, I guess I would say if someone got a level 4 harm and couldn't heal it, they would get a level 4 harm and couldn't heal it and they die, right? Like that could have happened this season at any point. In fact, we got very close a number of times. SI could have died easily during that same mission that Valence did if it didn't break.
It was going badly.
It was going very bad.
Yeah.
But the kingdom thing was basically there's that moment where sovereign immunity gets. Does that even exist? Yeah, sovereign immunity gets arrested still in the kingdom game, right?
Yeah.
And
it's like a much more or less. It's not a full scene in the actual Kingdom game. I think we like reduced it to just some narration that you did.
We moved some stuff around.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a situation where it was
Thank
like
you, Allie.
we played it out, and hated the way it felt because it didn't feel in character for anyone involved.
No.
Right. It just felt like we kind of backed ourselves into the corner to where it played out that way. And so we ended up re-recording the arrest, making it less of a focal point, which is an interesting thing because it means it's like we had to stay away from the scene. We knew we wanted it to happen, but the closer we got to it, the more like radioactive it would get, because to play it out beat for beat might put us in the same position, right?
Like we get trapped again in the
yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally.
Because it was emotion, it was emotion driven. It reminds me a lot of not just because it was a mid-season kind of thing, but the Feast of Patina, because it was like there was a degree to which the emotions at the table were pushing people in directions where it felt like, well, I don't know how to get out of this. Is this the thing I want? No, but. Or maybe like you don't really know, because everyone has this idea of what's happening, and having that separation from it is helpful, because again, if you just play through it again, you might end up in that same state.
And I want to underscore, because I think I've seen people over the years say that because of the fact that we do things like this sometimes, it means we're not doing actual play. You can play games like this at home. You can say at your home table, hey, can we sleep on this? Can we undo this? Can we go back? That is actual play. You can and should have those mechanisms of collaborative storytelling at your table at home. That is not a special thing that making a show allows you to do. You get to do that too.
A lot of rule books even outline like, hey, if you need to, they have mechanisms for jumping back, or for, or for saying like, hey, if you decide that your story took a bit of a weird swing, please go back and,
And it's like, oh, but you didn't do what the dice said. Like, fuck off. We're taking care of each other and trying to make a good story. What do you want?
Well, and the other thing here is, and we're not even at that question yet, there are other deaths that happen this season that have nothing to do with dice at all. In that same game, obviously, is the Clem Gursiv Rock fight, which is do we just want to, Jack, do you just want to jump to that since we're here anyway in this moment?
No, let's go in order.
Right,
we can come back to it.
So guess what, everybody?
It's
you have to wait.
To keep
we're
people
teasing
through
it.
the break.
Just
it's
like
a little
the
trailer.
Clem.
Season 7.
Exactly. All right, well then
Season 7, the second half of this postmortem.
Oh my god.
Yes. All right, let's go to the next one then. Unless does anyone have anything else to say about Valence or Leap leaving the show? All right.
I was excited to see both new characters. That's it.
Yeah, totally. Art, can you read this next one? From Hen.
Yeah. Wait, is this what we just oh, this is different.
No, it's slightly different.
It's different.
Slightly different. My question is for Jack, Dre, and Keith. This was the first season during which we've had PC changes mid-season. What was that experience of changing characters like on y'all's end? Was there anything particularly challenging or surprising about it? How long had you been planning your new characters?
It was exciting. It was risky. I found it exciting and risky. As to like the
I also found it exciting and risky.
Did you find it exciting and risky, Dre?
I found it hard.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, it was for me it was stressful.
That's the risky bit.
We didn't know how much time was left. We had no idea.
We had no idea.
Part of the thing about the back half of the show is that like we left Kingdom thinking we would have as much after Kingdom as we had before, but not knowing that for sure, right? And then Valence dies. We had no idea that was coming. And I think, Allie, you and I was like, Allie, I think we might have to end the season now. I think the season's actually over. I'm not sure what we're doing. Like, Valence died. What the fuck do we do? Okay, we're going to do one more arc and then it's over. And we ended up doing like 2 more arcs each in the end anyway, or maybe even more than that, plus the finale. But we just didn't know. And so suddenly there was this, you all had a lot of pressure on you to fill in those characters with very little time.
Especially
but we did know, to be clear, we did know at that point that season 2 was coming. With each of those characters, I had already said privately to each of you, hey, to some degree, we can start queuing up stuff for the future in a way that we know we're going to have time to get to. Sorry, Dre, you were going to say something.
Oh boy, I don't remember if I was going to respond specifically to you, but I was just going to talk about why it was difficult for me.
Yes.
I think Valence was really the first character that my normal like character creation process for the show is to find a mechanic or a hook that really interests me, and then to like build a character around that. And Valence was the exact opposite. I mean, we had so many conversations about Valence before we decided or even talked about a class for Valence. Totally. It was all like, who is this character? And then what class fits that character? And I think switching to figure, it was more mechanic driven, I think, with some backstory stuff.
Yeah.
But then it was also like, we ended up not really having any space for all of his mechanics to come to bear.
Not at all, right? Because it's like one arc.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we knew that you were going to end up playing the figure in next season, assuming that they made it, right?
Yeah.
But
and I think that was another part that was tricky, was at times it just felt like figure was just kind of like, we were biding the figure's time until the next season.
But the alternative was you not playing anyone for
and I wanted to play.
Yeah, which is tough. Which is a tough situation with a campaign like this, right?
Yeah.
Or doing another mission to just stretch and give Bismuth space, which like there's pluses and minuses to that. One of the minuses would be we would be still doing Partisan month 14 or something,
right?
Because of the way actual play cuts down. Jack and Keith, I've heard that it was, exciting and risky. Do you have any other thoughts besides that here?
Well, I didn't know. You say you told us that there was going to be a sequel. I think we were probably still in conversations about whether or not I would be playing Clem in a sequel. I distinctly remember throwing Kalar into that mission,
right?
Not knowing whether or not this was going to be the last time I was going to play them.
See, this is why we have to, this is why I'm like, we might have to talk about Clem to explain some of this stuff, because Clem lives right at the end of Kingdom when we record it. When we record it, Clem, the last shot of Clem is crying in a bedroom when we end.
Yes, the original recording of Kingdom.
Right. And the plan is for you to just keep playing Clem in the second half of the season.
And then we just go like, this doesn't fucking work.
This sucks.
Why? If Clem comes, we have a load of options here, all of which are bad, right? Either Clem's like, I'm a revolutionary now, and everyone's like,
no, you're not.
Sick. Why should we believe you?
Yeah.
Or Clementine is like, well, screw you guys. And then it's like, well, then what do they do? Do they lock her up? And or do they? But then it's like, well, how does she go out on missions? Is she only put on missions that she is going to try and exploit or something?
Also, we'd established that she was not like a good pilot, and why would they ever let her have command?
Why would you let? So then we were like, oh, what do we do? This sucks.
Mm-hmm. And so you wanted space. You wanted like, okay, let's push away from Clem. Let's get her associated with something. Let's play out something to figure out if she will return as a PC. But in the meantime, let me roll up another character who could be either a one-off or could be planting a seed for season 2.
Yes. I don't know if I have the notes for the characters that I came up with. It was like Aya Rook was one.
That's
was
correct.
Like someone who
that would have been like a rookie character, probably, right?
Yeah, here's what I've written. Bureaucratic monitor committed to the cause but still struggling to find their place in the revolution. Old leftist who has fought all the battles and is exhausted. Pirate queen. Church of perennial cultists signing on with apparatus. Now, interesting. Then I wrote leader of distant Millennium Break cell who's been brought back in from the cold. This ended up being Kalar, pretty much. Rival Nobel agent. And then I wrote aliens in the outfield. Enemy team of aliens trying to convince the alien planet that the Earth should be destroyed.
Yes.
Where it's like the idea of someone sent in like another valence where it's like, no, fuck these guys. We don't want anything to do with them. How could we destabilize them? And then finally, Aya Rook, his eager subordinate following his promotion. But what this meant, relevant to Kalar was that, like, I played him so aggressively in that first mission, not really knowing that he was going to... It's a bit like when you told us that we're doing a sequel to Partizan, Austin, and I had planned 3 seasons of sci-fi music. And now what do I have to do? And with Kalar, it's like, I thought he was just going to show up and then we were going to do another season, and suddenly we're in another mission and he's got 26 stress or something. How did that happen?
That is what happened,
I don't know.
Isn't it? Yeah. And so
it's amazing how Partisan 2's soundtrack is going to be all just covers of non-royalty music.
Of royalty-free music. Yeah. It's going to be Del Carnival from Bluff City again. It's going to be so good.
God.
Big scenes with Camptown races under them.
Everyone's like, what is going on? This is my least favorite season yet. The play is really good, but the music sucks.
Music is brutal. It's not good. So I think that adds a lot to the way you played Kalar out the gate. And then, like, we played Tower, and we'll get there. We'll talk about that in a bit.
The other thing is, with Kalar is, when you see those videos of dogs that are being held above a swimming pool and they're paddling, even though their paws aren't in the water?
Yes.
You know those videos?
Yes, I do know those videos.
That's what I wanted to do with Kalar. I wanted to, like, lower Kalar into a scene and have his legs moving before he hit the ground, such that when he hit the ground, he was just like, off we go. All right, let's go. Let's see what we're going to do here.
Keith, Phrygian rules.
Yeah.
I love Phrygian so much. And there was something if I'm honest, like, it was very stressful being like, okay, the first major branched character we're going to see for an extended period of time is going to be a player character, because it's a big, weird, high concept thing like the Iconoclasts were in Twilight Mirage, and it means giving over control over the depiction of them. And I definitely trusted you to do it, but it was one of those things that was still like, all right, we're going to have a lot of conversations so that we can sync. And my favorite thing is you consistently surprised me in line with exactly how I thought of the branched in your depiction of Phrygian, both as an outside observer who was trying to make sense of the world, who didn't have any preconceived notions or connections with people, but also in the ways in which you were able to find a sort of aesthetic and self-expressive through line and play that throughout both action sequences, through downtime sequences, the bit about the mime conversation at Gen Con and how you pulled on that for Phrygian trying to find a new war form and stuff like that. Amazing. Just so good.
I forgot. I was like, I think you said mime, and then I was like, oh, wait, mime? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yes.
Okay, mime, right, yes, okay.
So I'm curious,
that's great.
How was it for you on your side? Yeah,
it was stressful the whole time. It was stressful. So the first thing that was stressful was like choosing to leave behind was tough, and then we went through like a really short period where I was like, okay, I've got half a season to do this. And then it was like, no, I've got 1 arc to do it. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, no, maybe I've got 3 or 2 or 2.5. 2.5.
Yeah.
So it was tough to like not know how much time I had to do Phrygian. And then also really wanting to make sure that I did them right.
But you did it. Like, I think that's one of my favorite characters from you all time because you got them in a really great way. And also there are so many sequences with them where the encounter can feel very alien because of what they're doing, or like when they finally meet Corazian at the end of the Kazmatakori arc. That whole exchange is so weird.
It's so weird.
I love it so much. It's like so. I mean, that whole mission. I mean, here's the other thing that actually goes back to like Dre's character, right? Like, I designed that mission to include a moment. Like, I knew that Dre had a sick mech, and so I wanted to build a mission where Figure and Bismuth could debut this incredible mech and do like big shit in it, because that's how powerful the Figure and Bismuth was as an ace. But we just didn't get that mission, and so at the end of it, it felt very appropriate. We also didn't get a big brawl between the two. Yeah. Between the two branched, and also just like it felt very branched in a way to me.
It did, and I also really ended up liking how different Corazian was.
Yeah.
To Phrygian.
Yes.
Where, like, when you play, like, the only branched character in the entire thing, it makes it equally hard to know, well, who are the branched? Because then, you go from having, like, no example to an all-encompassing single point reference point.
Yes.
And then to have Corazian show up and be, like, totally different.
Right.
To be one of my favorite lines.
Go ahead.
In that whole, like, post-Kingdom was Corazian looking at, like, who was I with? Was it Millie?
I want to say Sovereign Immunity.
I was with Sovereign Immunity, right, yeah. And asking Sovereign Immunity, like, are they always like this? Or something?
Yes.
Or something like that.
Yes, totally. There was such a, I had built that entire encounter to be about Corazian. One, seeing the marks of Corazian slowly working their way through the entire facility, not burning, but like melting,
eroding.
Things like it's eroding, but it's not eroding in the traditional sense. It's this other sort of like ocean erosion or whatever.
It's time rain.
It's time
yeah, they were
rain.
like making a canyon out of this.
Yes, exactly.
This military facility.
Yeah. And then doing it on the stairs while you're down the stairs, which is like, that's Corazian. I at some point someone asked me via Twitter. I think it was someone on Twitter. Maybe it was someone it might have been in the Discord. Someone basically was surprised to see another humanoid branch, and it's like, no. The Corazian took that form of a humanoid to talk to Sovereign Immunity mostly, because Sovereign Immunity was there. Corazian is the water eroding the stairs behind you. That's what Corazian is, in the same way that if we ever saw Phrygian in full form, Phrygian would be this wild set of cables, bouncing around like loose bridge, cables or something, right? And I loved playing that character. I loved having you to bounce off of to produce different visions of what the branched are. And Corazian is in some ways, as the outro suggests, a vision of what the branched who come in contact with Empire can slip towards, right? You can once they've been removed from the Golden Branch, once they've stopped living in the bubble of other branched, they start to hit Empire and start to be convinced of other ways of living that are about conquest and harming people. And so it was fun to play that perspective as sort of a foreshadowing of what might be to come to some degree. Not that that's happening to all the branch, but that is happening to some of the branch, as the outro suggests.
Right. The other thing that I like about Corazian is that it's like Corazian is able to produce like a relatively salient argument for themselves as like not really doing anything different than what Phrygian is doing, by like, you're just working with some other group in order to help your main goal of destabilizing the Stells, and I'm also doing that.
I work with a different group.
And it's like, if your position is that like it's hard to explain what makes it different that you're killing people pretending to have a humanoid form and not doing that.
Right. Totally. Yes.
Right. Like, what is to an outside observer, what is fundamentally the difference between these two kinds of killing?
Yeah, totally.
And I think having a second branched character, like, really helps highlight that. So,
yeah. All right, next question.
Sorry, that turned into a why
No.
Corrosion is an interesting character instead of what I liked about or how.
No,
Phrygian
I still think
felt,
we got there. I think because a lot of my playing Corrosion was still based on your playing Phrygian. I was bouncing off of the depiction of that character you did because I didn't want there to be one branched perspective that only suggested one like way of being or whatever.
Right. And Phrygian didn't have the answer. Phrygian's not, it's
No.
not. Who's expecting Phrygian to all of a sudden be able to describe, like, like I don't know how my elbow works on a fundamental level.
Right. Yes. Allie, do you want to read this?
I bet you're closer than you think.
Probably get there. Allie, do you want to read this next one?
Yeah, this one comes in from Anonymous, and it's Art. How did you decide that you wanted to complete SI's life and arc in the finale rather than carrying him to season 8?
There's a couple answers here, and there's like the most base one, which is have we announced what we're doing for that mechanically for the next one for 8 for Partisan 2?
No,
I wouldn't say it.
Okay. There was something mechanically that really was calling to me about that season, about Partisan 2.
Okay.
If you're asking about the game system, I think we've said that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We're sure? Austin? Is Austin going?
Austin is sneaking away for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, if Austin's not here, Allie is the person who can tell me what I can say.
Yeah. We know about Armorister. Please talk about it.
Armorister, and I was instantly like, I need to play the most magical class that I can. I'm taking a magic class. I'm boxing out for that, and Sovereign Immunity can't get there. I'm not interested in that story, and
where Sovereign Immunity becomes extremely magical.
That would have been a great arc. What are you talking about? I'm so old now, and I'm learning magic, and it's helping me.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I should have said this all out loud before we got there, but I didn't, and so here we are. And the other thing is, like, after Chrysanth died, it was like, well, what am I doing here anymore? And once you have to like manufacture your new nemesis, that's not fun anymore. So those were the two factors. I think way more the first one than the second one. I think if I'd been really invested in keeping SI, I could have found something, Yeah. But instead, because I was looking at the distance, I was like, well, this is it. Bye.
Yeah. Well, it ends up becoming a really interesting through line because, like, the thing SI ends up having to do is, like, prove himself to this new generation of revolutionaries. And at the end of that, he does so with his life, right?
Yeah. Cementing him in a way, right? That, like, his legacy would have been overshadowed in some ways otherwise. It would have been very easy for this new generation to just talk about him like a has-been or like someone who had never achieved it. And now he gets to be a symbol of the cause in this really big way. Also, it is really worth underscoring how much losing Chrysanth again through the second half of the season into chaos, right? Where, like, that was part of Valence and Chrysanth at once realigns the entire back half of the season. I'd pitched internally the back half of the season as being like, there will be a Chrysanth mission side and a Motion mission side. And maybe the parties jump around, but that's the structure. It's like the Curtain, the Pact, and Millennium Break are all in this kind of three-way struggle. And it still remains to some degree, but the pact just like becomes such a more powerful thing when Chrysanth gets taken off the table, because she's a check on them fictionally as well as you, as well as a nemesis to you. And the other thing about that moment was so wild is like, if Sovereign Immunity had actually declared Chrysanth as his rival, she could not have died there, and that would have meant some other resolution to that whole sequence. And I think about that all the time, that like your drive was to get one over on Chrysanth, but you had never declared her a rival, which didn't give her plot armor in a really funny way. And again, it's one of those things that's like Beam Saber is representing or is trying to produce mechanically the rules of fiction in that way, where like, no, we didn't frame her as your quote unquote rival exactly, and so she is not safe from Valence, for instance. So yeah. Any other thoughts here? Keep on moving. All right. Who has not read one yet? I guess maybe everybody has at this point. You have one or you haven't? Keith, go ahead and read this next one. I have not read one. From Kate.
From Kate. Pre-finale, a lot of the big fights seemed impossible at first, and then the party pulled out victories by the skin of their teeth. Every fight with motion comes to mind. Austin, I was wondering how you set up those scenarios so precisely, or did you expect some of those fights to not be winnable? I suspect that the answer is Beam Saber's tier mechanics are really good, but I'm still curious.
I think Beam Saber's, it's not the tier mechanics are good, it's that the mission setup stuff lets you think through things in terms of how many, so the basic way Beam Saber's like, here's how you do a mission report, here's how you build a mission out, is like, here's a list of NPCs, here's the objectives and secondary objectives, here's the rules of engagement, which if they break, you get paid less, which is an interesting thing in that game that I think we even play harder, like fictionally. But in Beam Saber, breaking the rules of engagement just means you don't get paid as much. It doesn't mean that you're like, that you get ostracized instantly from your, I mean, you might lose some points, you do lose some like faction points, but it's mechanized in a very clear binary, quantifiable way. But in any case, the after those, you then also set up like, here are basically the number of clocks they need to clear to succeed at this mission. Sort of. Here are the the obstacles that are on the board, and then here are some problems that could show up. And the GM has a lot of agency, both designing those problems and those clock challenges at the before the game starts. But then also, it's almost like if your mission is to take Fort Icebreaker, you've set up what those starter clocks are to get in and overcome it, and then if you need to spice it up, you've already pre-built this menu of kind of challenges you can add to the pot to turn the burner up a little bit, to add a little kick to it. And so being able to do those things and then kind of like adjust for taste in the middle of a mission means that you end up with a lot of space. What I'll say is there are actually lots of examples here where the mission didn't go the way I thought it would go at all, right? So for instance, in one of the early missions, the Ashen Forest mission, y'all like never stepped on one of the like plates, one of the like the wards, right, successfully, and so you manage not to ever like trip the alarm and cause a bigger conflict to occur. In the Chasmata Quarry thing, you just went an entirely different way than I anticipated, and so we never had like the open conflict with Valor that I had expected. That would have been this big motion style fight, and also could have been this big assault from the jump if you had gone a complete different way. But then things like the motion fight and things like the Orzen like mock fight that was really fun. I just felt like I had the right tools to frame those conflicts and then to dial in the difficulty as we continued by either adding or subtracting obstacles along the way. And then also, frankly, I just think that the parties, I think everyone as a player was very good about doing setup actions, about doing teamwork actions. And once I can rely on that because of familiarity with the system, it means I can play harder, because it means I know that when it's time for the big swing, everyone is on the same page at trying to get the dice to where they need to be. Because you have those tools at the table, right? Art, you just made that tweet about en passant, the move in chess, right, where you were taught it wrong, and it made you want to quit chess. It made you quit chess as a kid, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you need to know all the moves in chess to make chess be a fun time if you're playing against someone else who is going to use all the moves available in chess. Otherwise, it's gonna suck. And I think, like, if you go back and look at Scum and Villainy, we were not all on the same page there, and I was often playing way harder and expecting everyone to know all the teamwork moves, know how to use their gambits, know how to use, how to push themselves, change their position to desperate, etc. And we got way more of that this season, and I aligned to that a little bit cleaner. And that's about me recognizing where the players are at and trying to meet at the right point. So yeah, I think shout outs to Beam Saber for giving me that framework. And also, and this is just a big thing, it's genre knowledge. It's like, I get mech fights really well because I've been watching mecha anime and playing BattleTech and Mech Warrior my whole life. And so there is a rhythm and a familiarity to what those fights are supposed to feel like when they're good. And I think I have a pretty good familiarity with them to the degree that I can orchestrate or conduct it well, because it's just a rhythm I know already. So I think that's a big part of it. So thank you for the note, Kate. What's up next? Gus writes in. I'll read this one. It's really short. Dear table friends, I have a very important question for Dre. Does Valence have a tail?
All right. So my answer when I saw this yesterday was no.
Okay.
Now I think about it, my answer is maybe.
Why'd you just sat with it and imagined?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
How many tails?
Ooh.
Probably one.
Just the one.
Is this, when you say maybe, do you mean like maybe Valence has a tail and everyone knows, or maybe Valence has a tail, no one is sure?
Secret tail.
I think everyone knows. If Valence has a tail, everyone knows.
Okay.
If Valence has a tail, it's huge.
It's huge. It's beautiful. Everyone loves Valence's tail.
Can I just say something?
Always.
That now I'm really desiring seeing Miles Tails Prower cosplaying Valence.
Yes. Good. Well, I'm glad we've gotten to the next question here. Allie, can you read here from Anonymous?
Oh, please. Yeah. You want me to read this?
Yes.
If you were casting your Partisan Season 1 characters in a live-action adaptation, who would you choose and why? Austin gets 3 NPCs because he's special.
I don't need any because I already did this all season. I already said that's Oscar
true.
Isaac, that's Dev Patel, here are all the hot boys I like. They're all in this fucking show already.
And thank you so much for that.
Of course. But no, so Miles Tails Prower for Valence, got it.
Yeah. Yep.
We're all doing Sonic characters.
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
Sonic
Just make
is
sure I get the joke.
Leap.
Oh, that's a good one.
Leap is fast. Leap had all that
Leap is fast. I like that.
Has attitude.
Rosie
the figure
is Millie. That's fun.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Figure's Big the cat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
Who's Froggy?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it's Clem, right?
Phrygian. Maybe. I was gonna
I
say
would put Clem
Phrygian
as
is
Cream,
E102
the
Gamma.
rabbit.
We're talking over each other. We're too excited about this. Say that again, both of you, one at a time. Janine?
I was gonna say that Clem would be Cream the rabbit.
You don't think like a
Cream also has a little pet chow.
True.
It just feels very Clem to me.
Yeah.
Also, Cream has a mom, like a canon mom, Vanilla or something.
That sounds
Like
right.
the bigger rabbit,
would've-
so you could have like a dynamic there.
I would have put Clem as Blaze the Cat, a villain who hangs out with the heroes.
Oh, sure.
Wait, is Blaze a villain? I don't know anything about Blaze. She's in
Blaze
06?
is sort of a villain, yeah.
Okay.
Or Rouge.
Or
Rouge
Rouge.
is also a villain.
Rouge is
that
too,
sort of hangs out with-
I'm a sexy bat. That's Millie.
Yeah.
I was going to say Shadow, but that works.
Also,
too.
Shadow works.
SI
what
is
I was
Knuckles,
saying-
right? That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Knuckles.
Me,
is
what about
revolutionary.
you? Yeah, definitely Knuckles. Misled
Sorry,
by
Keith.
Robotnik.
Uh-huh.
I was putting Phrygian as E102 Gamma potentially.
Sure. Yeah. Love that.
Wait. Leap isn't Sonic. Leap is Metal Sonic.
Oh, Leap is... Metal Sonic's evil, though.
But
You're not
Leap
wrong.
is metal.
Leap is metal.
Leap is metal.
I think it's more important that Leap is good than that Leap is metal.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Who's
I think there
Brown?
was a comic arcs in the original Sonic the comics where Sonic went metal to beat Metal Sonic.
Oh,
Oh,
well,
that's-
there you
So-
go. There you go. Brown is Robotnik, right?
You think so? Yeah.
You're a scientist who
I can't
builds
get away
machines.
from that one. Yeah.
It's a rough one. I'm sorry, but it is what it is.
But Rouge likes money.
Rouge does like money.
Oh, who's Charmy B?
Brown is not even close to sexy enough to be in the same conversation as Rouge.
This is the truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait. Who's Vector, Charmy B, and
Yeah, we need to know who the chaotics are. Who's Mighty? Mighty the Armadillo.
AO is
Always
Mighty.
forgotten. Who's Fang the Sniper?
Yeah, no one cares.
Are the chaotics just oh shit? Or just oh god, who are our friends from the Bridgetown? Why can I not
the
remember their
Oxflight
name?
clan?
Yeah,
Like
is that
Jesset.
just the chaotics?
Yeah, probably. That makes sense.
Oh,
to me.
Jesset is extremely Mighty the Armadillo.
You're right. Yeah, Jesset's Mighty, Vector is AO Rook, and Charmy B. We don't really have a Charmy B. Who's like our fun? I'm Charmy B. I'm a little bee.
Cedra or
Oh, sorry for doing Larry King's Sonic voice. I'm a little hedgehog.
who's Clem's
Nobody
assistant?
cares about me.
Clem's assistant is Styx the Badger. From Styx the Badger from what's
the Badger?
the new Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. She has a
see.
boomerang
She's a boomerang
and pigtails.
and pigtail.
Speaking of Sonic Boom, is Sovereign Immunity normal Knuckles or buff Knuckles?
Oh, Buff Knuckles.
Buff Knuckles.
Buff Knuckles.
Extremely broad Knuckles.
Oh,
Sovereign immunity is definitely Knuckles accompanied by the Sonic Adventure Knuckles rap song.
yeah. Unfortunately, Gurse of Rock is Silver the Hedgehog, which it is what it is. It just happens like that, and you got to take the L sometimes. All right. Does anyone have any real casting, or is this just good enough for us?
So in the document for this, I put Gillian Anderson, and maybe you thought that was a joke. It's
No,
not
I
a
didn't
joke.
put it
I
as
would
a
cast
joke.
Gillian Anderson as Thisbe
Yeah. Okay.
because I have the benefit of I don't have to worry about faces.
No, you
I don't have to worry
good
about.
voice.
I just have to think who would do an amazing robot voice.
That'd be fun.
And my choice is Gillian Anderson.
She's never done it before. I don't think we should.
I don't
make it
know.
happen.
We should reach out. Yeah.
Yeah. I figure for Valence, it's probably either a completely CGI character or a stunt person who's CGI over, so it would just be a voice actor. But the voice actor I thought of was Shora Agdashlu. She was in The Expanse.
Oh, she's
and she
Asagarala
was
in The Expanse, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
she's great.
She also voiced somebody in Mass Effect, and I can't remember who it was. But yeah.
Oh, did she? I didn't know this.
She was one of
Like a diplomat or something, right?
Yeah,
Or,
she was one of Tally's people. Why can I not
that makes
remember?
perfect sense.
Oh, wasn't she Tully's aunt or something? I wanna
That might
say?
be right.
She's
That
like
makes sense to
one of the
me.
main. Yeah.
Yeah, Admiral.
Yeah, like maybe she's somebody on the Council of
she's an
Admirals or
admiral.
whatever.
She's Admiral
Okay.
Shalaron Vostanbe,
Okay.
apparently.
I
yeah.
cast Leap. I've been thinking about this. Who's Leap? Leap's a robot, so I also don't need to think of a face. So I cast me as Leap.
Okay, great.
There you go.
You're gonna do a
Great.
great job.
Perfect.
Yeah. I think her performance is very true to the original character in the podcast.
That's what I was thinking. I literally could not do me better than me.
I think Clementine is Anya Taylor-Joy, just like a very shows up, says lines well. And I think that there's a film, I wish I could remember who it's by. It's called Midnight Special, and it's just about like a boy who has magic powers, and his dad and their brother who try and look after him because the government are coming after. It's a fun movie, and it stars Michael Shannon as the dad and Joel Edgerton as his brother, and they both play really out of type in ways that I think was really, really fun to watch. And so I would give Kalar to either Michael Shannon or Joel Edgerton, who are both kind of like tough weirdos most of the time, but in this movie at least have this real streak of like taking care of this person and understanding what that means and what is going to be necessary for taking care of this person. It's a fun movie. I'd watch it again.
Yeah. Anyone else have one that jumps out?
I think I've said this one already, but Sylvester Stallone has been my
classic.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you have said that. That makes sense to me.
Good movie, Sylvester Stallone. Not bad movie, Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, sure. Good. Yes, an important distinction.
We're making a good movie, okay?
Yes. All right.
I don't know. Vin Diesel for figure.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
For Brown, I would have to find someone completely new, and I would have to do a casting call and sit across from people and be like, "Can you do your most condescending eye roll for me?" And then that's how I would choose.
So you just want to bring in people from like Instagram to be mean to you, and then cast based on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would DM everybody who has a TikTok video that's like, "Your best friend does your makeup and is mean to you about it."
God,
and I'd be like, "Yo, come through." I get enough.
Is that a genre?
Oh my God, Keith.
Yeah. Do you want to play a fish
that's
person?
like big in ASMR right now. There's a whole ASMR genre of just like, I'm gonna be mean to you, and you're gonna like it.
Been there for years. Yeah.
Keith, the world is vast and we are small.
Yeah.
I will shout out. I would cast for Gerse of Rock's voice Chiwetel Ejiofor, who is a fantastic actor, who has an incredible voice, and who could turn it on the way Gur needs to. So shout outs to him. Any other ones? All right, I'm gonna keep on moving. I'll read this one from Jess, who says, "I really appreciated how this season paid special attention to not only how different bodies can look and function, but also how they can break down and heal. As someone with chronic fatigue syndrome, I really appreciated the inclusion of a character with the same diagnosis. Not gonna lie, I did cry a little bit when it was first mentioned during character creation. Even though Aegon was the only character that explicitly shared my disability, I felt that the sense of loss, trauma, fatigue, and alienation from my own body that I experienced due to CFS was echoed in many other characters. For example, the loss of Phrygian's war form, the way that Valence's gas body had to acclimate to a new suit, the dramatic physical transformations from the Witch and Glass's healing, etc. How did you go about creating this recurring theme of bodily breakdown and the way it changes someone? Was it something that you set out to depict at the start, or did it emerge organically through attempts to honestly portray war and conflict? To what extent did the mechanics of the game influence how much attention was paid to the consequences of pushing a body beyond its limits? I use this again to shout out Kevin Snow. They were a huge help in thinking about bodies, injury, disability. I don't think we were perfect with this year. I think there are a number of things we could have done better. I really wish I had foregrounded Gucci Garantine's conditions much earlier in the show, and definitely struggled, like I think a lot of creators do, with like, how do you bring something that's quiet and private into the foreground? And the answer is to do it the way we did it with Aegon, which is to just say it outright, and even if we don't get a lot of attention on it, it at least is there and we can work with it. And then to try to apply that same material bodily focus on the moments when it makes sense for the characters who do get a lot of spotlight. And so the things that come to mind are obviously the ones that Jess has highlighted here. And some of it is mechanical. Like, I think Beam Saber, even with the lighter healing rules which we took, you still end up with moments like Clem completely beat to shit after, I think was that after Prophet's Path that Clem was, the Winter Doctor stuff happened, and it was like, we need to hold on Clem being hurt here in a real way.
Yeah.
But I also think that there were moments when we did that separate from mechanics. Clem on Chorus Island, it was important that we consistently came back to her arm having been broken and what she was doing to try to treat that and the slow healing process therein.
Right.
And it's interesting because sci-fi often gives you the space to instantly heal something. In fact, one of the questions we got this season from someone who we didn't include it here was like, why didn't you cut anybody's arms off this season? Isn't that a classic thing? And the answer is like, we haven't done that in a few seasons because we were leaning on it as a quick and easy Star Wars-y way of indicating change and harm. And instead this season, I think we saw people get hurt, struggle with repairing themselves, healing in some way. And even when we did lean into science fiction-y things, I think about something like Cassilier getting the kind of mosaic, sea glass stuff from The Witch in Glass. I think about, obviously, all of the figure in Bismuth having been someone who had suffered traumatic, near life-ending injury, and then having received these sort of like supernatural prosthetics in the Bismuth itself. We had conversations about like Dre, one of the first conversations we had before Bismuth was on screen was like, how do you deal with having half of your body be this rock? What are the material things you have to do to maintain your body after this like magical surgery? Because even if the surgery is supernatural and it's perennial magic and it's the special rock or whatever, there still has to be a material set of practices that then that the figure does to continue to live like this, right?
Yeah.
And it was like exercises and rehab and stuff, basically, right? So yeah, I think those are the big things for us. I think it does go back to, again, what Sylvie said before, which is like knew we were making a season about war. I knew it would be weird to do that without like damage, people being hurt and damage rolls being scary, and to make that real, it meant to have a scene where Clementine has to go under the knife and it's very scary. We almost lost Clem there for a moment. And that doesn't mean that the Dr. Leap stuff wasn't also incredibly funny in some ways, but I don't think it ever was not tense during all of that, so yeah. Any other thoughts on this stuff? All right. Let me look ahead and see what the next question is. Oh boy, here we go. Art, can you read this?
Yeah.
I know. Sorry to Morgan, who got two questions here, but both times were just attached to another question because it made sense as like a supplemental thing.
Yeah, no shade, Morgan.
That equals one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that equals one.
Good
You're
questions.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Anonymous got a ton, so
True.
we really have to wonder. Oh, sorry, I'm working on my joke. I scrolled away from the question.
No worries.
At what point did Jack and Austin decide Clementine would come back, and did they know it would make me personally lose my whole being with delight and terror? And then to follow, just do the other one now, right? Yeah. I'm curious why you chose to keep everything about the Witch in Glass totally secret until the Tower episodes. One of the things I love most about Friends at the Table is the embrace of dramatic irony and feeling like the audience and players get to be in on the joke. But here, this twist was kept very secret until it completely played out. What was the logic behind that?
So, Jack, we said before that when we actually finished the Kingdom game, Clem was just like lying in bed doing a Shinji, just kind of crying, right?
Yeah.
Disassociating.
Well, I think the idea was like, it sucks when you have to tell a story and you're like, I've got a great idea for where it's going, and then you have to sit down at the page and actually tell that story. Because I think we had both sort of been talking where it's like, oh, let's do a fun sort of like punished Venom Snake arc where it's like, oh, Clem is like dark and angry and is depressed.
We knew that was one of the outcomes. I think we did go into Tower being like, who the fuck knows what happens here? Maybe you die.
No, even pre-Tower, right?
Okay.
Like if we just assume that like prior to falling from Icebreaker, we're like, oh, Clem's gonna be like, and then we just had these conversations. I think it's something you're really good at as the showrunner, of just being like, yes, but how? Or like, yeah, but what does that actually, like what does that actually mean?
Because
What's
otherwise it's going to be
do?
6 weeks from now, and Clem is going to feel like she stalled out because I'm afraid you don't have momentum here at this point, right? We didn't get a scene of you swearing vengeance on Chrysanth or deciding I'm going to undercut this rebellion from the inside out. We just kind of got deflation, which felt right, but didn't feel like you could stay as Clem at that point.
No.
But also, you said to me in pretty, no uncertain terms, rather, very certain terms, that like you weren't quite ready to decide to leave Clem behind yet. You wanted to stick with Clem for a little bit, but not keep her here, right? Not keep her in the thing.
Yeah, I kind of got this sensation of like there is something horrible and interesting, and now we just need to work out what that is.
Yeah.
Where it's like, when you're like, and I get this a lot with music when I'm counting measures and I'm like, oh, there's something out there six measures from now, and I don't know what it is, but I know I'm aiming for that thing. And now what we've got to do is figure out what the 6 measures up to this thing in the future is. I think the first thing you pitched, right, was like, we were just talking it through, and you were like, oh, what if Gur kills her?
Yeah.
And that was immediately really exciting because it let us kill 2 birds with 1 stone, which is ironic given what happened, but it let us say something about Gur, which was really fun. And I think as soon as you said, oh, Gur, let's have Gur kill her, it also immediately started like giving both of us images of a scene that we were really excited about. Like this idea of like, well, what does a scene mean that is going to make Gur Sevrek, the patient priest, take such a petty action, and on some level reduce themselves to Clementine's level in such a weird, violent motion. And then
it was specifically, we did land on the like insulting his faith, saying that they didn't actually believe the things that they believed and had sacrificed so much for. And so we ended up, almost choreographing that sequence as an outro to the Kingdom arc. I mean, one of my favorite things is the way we ended up cutting that sequence to where everyone is laughing about sick as shit, looking sick as shit as the final rule, and then you kind of come in with like, hey, what about Clem? What's up with Clem? Or I don't remember the exact transition there. Maybe I was asking that about Clem, but it's like the other foot drops. And so we knew we wanted a scene where Clem and Gur threw each other off of Icebreaker Prime. We kind of talked about the palette we wanted to use for that sequence, right? We talked about it being dirty and ugly. We go to the Coen brothers a lot. And so we did that here in terms of like, what if they were shooting this sequence? We knew there should be a storm. And this actually replaces a scene, right? Because the other thing we had to do at that point was we had to re-record an overthrow, because the overthrow that Gur does at the very end happened on the top of Icebreaker Prime originally, and instead we had to change that to be in the chapel or whatever, right?
We recorded 3 scenes. We came in and did 3 big pickups, which was Clementine going to Gur and getting overthrown at a chess game with 3-felt repetition. That was new.
Yes, that was fun.
We had Clementine making an absurd pitch to the Princept.
Yes, which was also just we needed the Princept on screen. The Princept just kind of vanished in that third kingdom, or the final kingdom, the 8th or whatever kingdom turn. And then the final encounter there on the roof, right? And it was so fun to do that scene with you because we both knew where it was going, but we didn't know how to get there necessarily. So it was
we talked about it long enough that it wasn't quite like, and I felt really comfortable going into that scene. It was tremendously exciting to just be like, man, okay, these are the beats we need to hit. I think if we'd went into it with much less prep, it could have been really unpleasant, and it could have been really difficult and wouldn't have made the scene that felt safe or felt consequential. Because the thing we kept coming back to is like, oh, we want this to hit really, really hard. Because we realized pretty quickly that if we want to send them off Icebreaker, there is something really fascinating about like, well, what if they survive? Where it's like, what if you do something so outlandish and violent and they come out of it, and that opens the door to this arc that's coming, which is like, what pulls someone like Clementine out of a situation like that? And so in order to make that work, we wanted to hit that scene as absolutely hard as we could, which required us to have these conversations about player safety going into it. And we did it in one take, I think, but I would have had absolute faith in both of us that if we had gone like, oh nope, that doesn't work, or I don't like how we're doing this, or
no, but I think our timing was I'm really happy with that sequence. And so then here again, the thing to like understand about the timing and all of this stuff is I think we knew we wanted to do. Okay, and we had lots of conversations. Do we go right into the Tower arc after that? Because we recorded it after Kingdom, but before we came back, before we like did probably whatever the next. What was the? I guess was Noon Crown, was Valence's death the next arc recorded?
Oh my god!
I think it was, right. So we do the Tower arc. We record it not knowing Valence is about to die, right? We make all these decisions not knowing Valence is about to die, which changes so much, I suspect, about the way Clem's eventual return happens. But, like, I think, Jack, in the notes for when we outlined this question, the thing that you identified was, like, the character who comes back from the dead is such a genre, like, standard. And for me, it was exciting because it was something we've never done before, basically.
It was so exciting.
Right?
To you know, it's such a lot of the time it's joyful to get to tell stories, and part of that is going, man, I really love it when this happens, or like I've always wanted to try that thing, or like this feels like it dovetails really nicely with what we're talking about. And I think there was some level of it where, you know, both you and I were just like, holy shit, let's kill a character on screen and then bring them back.
Right.
As part of this war story, as part of a story about lying and about weird fake plays that people do. It is so consistent to be like, and now here's a cliffhanger. What's going to happen? Oh no, they died. Oh no, they're back.
Right, totally. Which is like such a Gundam thing, but it's also a touchstone in things like Dr. Zhivago, the Strelnikov scene I've talked about as being like, I've always wanted the Mother Are There Wolves in the Forest cut to the reveal of Strelnikov. I know this is the most like niche thing because who the fuck has seen Dr. Zhivago? But like that's a hit for me. And it's a thing I've done on my side of the table before with characters. There have been big things that no one knows, like the Ibex reveal in Counterweight, which I don't want to get into too many specifics there, but there's a moment when someone punches Ibex in the face, and that's a big reveal, and that's like a thing I sat with for a long time, but neither players nor audience knew. And obviously lots of things in Hyron about the gods, about major characters, about the identities of major characters. And for me, part of doing it with Clem was, this is the moment Clem is becoming an NPC. Like, we finished recording the tower, and I knew we both kind of knew this is probably it for you and Clem. We'll sit with it for a while, but that felt like it was worth sitting on and teasing through the Witch and Glass stuff and then coming back to. I think it's understandably divisive because, you know, we definitely got other questions that framed this as like, hey, I really like kind of the way Morgan does here of like being in on the joke. I really like seeing it all laid out in front of us. And there are a couple of times in the season where that's not the case. And I think that that's just about genre mostly. And I think it's about being excited to play in that space for one of the first times to kind of do that long tease, you know?
Is there, my question would be, is it sort of like the cutting off people's hands where it's part of it's a genre thing, but the other part of it is like, well, we've done that.
Right.
And so there's other tools, like how many times can you do dramatic irony in a row where the question is like, a question would come in being like, why did you do dramatic irony again?
Right. Well, like, and again, part of it is that it was not set up to be, we did,
right.
It's I think it's one of those things that's tough is that like, to get the end of episode 28, the Clem Gur fight, it has to be done the way we did it. I don't think we get to that in natural play because we didn't get there in natural play, right? We ended up needing to sit with it and then come back to it and play it out separately and make that decision later. And so to get that high, we had to do it that way. But we only get that high after Jack says, I want to bench Clem for a little bit. There isn't a version of the story where Clem dies there because it couldn't have occurred in the game mechanics without Jack saying, I want to kill Clem here. Right.
Yeah. Also, it happened as a result of like fucking loads of conversations between all of us, and especially like Ali and you and me, where we're just like, oh my god,
What the fuck are we doing?
Like, what does this look like? The other thing is like Clementine is a character who is always doing big and stupid things.
Yes.
So I felt like any key beats about Clementine, really up until we hit Chorus Island, when she starts, when Clementine believes she has invented subtlety, is like, she's got to move noisily and stupidly, however she goes. Right.
And the other half of this was, at the end of it all, I knew I had a villain to play with, or if not definitely a villain. Clem was always a villain, but now this sort of strange semi-antagonist that I would get to play with for the rest of the season and into the next season of Partisan, where now we have this force out in the world that is neither the Curtain nor the Pact nor the Principality, but is certainly not Millennium Break, and can have this antagonistic rivalry as another rising force, and also a locus, a place where lots of people are. The Reflecting Pool as this through line from past, and thus also a through line from what past used to be, now becoming this thing that also echoes the two fleets at the end of Twilight Mirage, is such a fun echo of what happens at the end of Twilight Mirage. Like, there are witches out there in the Sea of Stars, and they have ships and fleets, and they're weird, and I don't know if you can trust them. And here's another one, and here's a one that is like all of the personae, all of the masks of the other space witches out there pulled away to this character who is so petty and selfish and thinks she's in control. I love having that in my playbook going into Armor Astar.
Yeah, I hope that if we give you Clementine, she doesn't get more capable.
No, she'll get. There's different types of capability.
She has more. Yeah.
Right. Like it's one thing to be more capable because you've gotten sharper. It's another thing to become more capable because you have more money, you have more power, you have more people, you have, your incompetence has a bigger effect, if that makes sense.
Right.
So yeah. I think that's probably the big picture stuff with all those scenes. Also, you had no idea about Gur. That was a fun gift to
not
me.
At all.
I think maybe a couple other people on the cast learned it because we had to do. I forget when.
I felt like everyone knew it but me and Jack.
I think that might be no. Allie knew it probably.
I have no idea.
I want to say Allie knew it. And maybe Art knew it for some reason.
I knew it.
I pitched you something that was too close.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. Art, you pitched me something, and I had to be like, no, we can't do that because Gur has secretly been killed and turned into a ghost, and then also his body has been fished out of the sea by Nadeo. So that's how you found out about it. Yes.
And therefore, I cannot be haunted by the ghost of Chrysanth Kesh.
Correct. Yes.
Oh yeah.
I remember there was this moment where Gur shows up as the ghost. Or as the haunting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, Gur is alive too? And there is there's a vibe of like, no, also shut up, and also maybe. And then the reveal happened, and I was like, wow, whiplash. Okay. And the vibe that I got was like, I had missed one thing where everyone knew.
Yeah.
Okay, so at least I wasn't the only one.
Yeah, totally. The reason that Chrysanth can't be a ghost is what is Perennial really going to help two Keshes live on in a row? Fuck that. No way. Perennial took her decision and stuck with Clementine. Don't fuck with Chrysanth. Like Also, the other reason why I didn't want Chrysanth to come back as a ghost is Dre killed a character for that, and I have to respect that as hard as I can. Right? If Chrysanth gets to keep fucking with people after death, that puts us in a situation where I have to offer that to Valence, and then we have 3 ghosts, and that's a lot of ghosts.
It wasn't a real ghost. It was just grief. Austin.
Right. Well, you said ghost, so what do you want? We already had a ghost.
I don't believe in ghosts.
Well.
Okay. Well. Bad news.
It felt like
just
a
grief
real
torments.
You've done this in other seasons where you have thrown a twist of one of our characters back at us in another way again. Mm-hmm. There's one in Marielda that I think about a lot that felt very similar to this moment, where it's like, you, the player, think you've got one up on this situation, but actually, and the one that Art and I kept predicting was that you were going to introduce sovereigns. You were going to introduce Chrysant's new sovereign immunity.
Oh yeah, I had no idea you were thinking about that. I wish you would have told me.
Early in
really
the season, Art was like, we were trying to predict what you were going to do, and Art was like, I think Chrysant's sovereign immunity is coming.
That would have been fun.
And they never did, but that would have been great.
Yeah, I wish I would have. You should have told me that was a thing you were afraid of, because then I would have made it happen. Because it's great. Tell me those things. I can't
tell you everything I'm afraid of, Austin.
Yes, you can. I need to know.
We don't have the time.
All right, next question. Who wants to take this one?
I'll read it.
You read it, Jack? Okay.
Ali Anonymous asks, it's this person again. Yeah. Anonymous asks, Ali and Dre, when did you decide to take Brown and Valence's relationship in a romantic direction? What goes into portraying that type of relationship in the actual play medium?
Well, hello. Hi.
Hi.
It's time to talk about Brown and Valence, I guess. Brown and Valence was an accident. It was definitely it was my favorite part of the season. It definitely changed Brown's characterization in a huge way, but also happened completely on accident, and then just kept rolling. So the thing with Beam Saber is that when you cut loose, quote unquote, you have to do it with another person, which is a thing that I just completely forgot until I had to do it. And I had this idea that Brown should go to a bathhouse. Where would Brown hang out? What would be a cool setting for that? Oh, Valence is there. Wait, they have to talk to each other while they're here. This is awkward. And then telepathy happened, and that's fun and interesting. But then I DM'd Dre in between us recording that and it releasing and being like, that was a little much. I really want to know how you feel about this, because that's such a version of intimacy that isn't actual intimacy, but we should talk about this before this is released to an audience. And Dre, I don't know if you want to interject here, but where we ended that conversation was okay, they're not neither of us really are intending to have these characters dating or anything at the end of this. I think you would explicitly said I don't think that Valence is interested in starting a relationship because they have this divine mission going on, and
not just with Brown, with anybody.
Yeah, Valence is busy. Valence had priority.
It's not you, it's me shit right now. I know.
And the way that we ended that conversation was that that makes sense that it wouldn't be a relationship, but the idea of exploring what friendship or how intimacy is different for two non-human characters would be interesting to continue to do. I think that we continue to do that. I think the thing that became difficult was that the biggest Valence Brown shipper on the podcast was Austin Walker.
Yeah, what's up? That's good.
It's true.
I'm gonna make damn sure. Listen.
Yeah, the character of that relationship, I think, got out of our hands in that way too.
What did I do? What the fuck? What did I? I never did anything.
Support, whenever they were together on screen, you would be like, "Yeah, I'm into this because I ship them," and me and Dre would be like, "Yeah, we get it. It's sexy and it's good."
It is. Well, and then I got to message you one night and be like, "Hey, are you around? Something just happened. Whoa, I'm getting wild noise. There it goes.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. No, yeah. That was fun. That was heartbreaking, but in the best possible way. Because genuinely for me, what we ended up with was a great sequence with Valence, and now we get the oh my god. What? Yeah. What's up?
I remember just freaking out when I heard about that too, and in a way that I had to be respectful to Dre and be like, you know, how are you handling this? I really like Valence as a character. This is really great. But then I was like, oh my God, I'm going to play Brown for the rest of my life. I'm going to have Brown as the greatest character ever. This is going to be great. This is like...
Say more. Explain how do you get to there from Valence dying?
That's the reaction of a long time like fan fiction-y shipper person like, oh man, this is so much material.
It's just like Brown was like the thing with Brown for a lot of the season was like, how significant is their buy-in? How genuine are they? Is there going to be a person to reach out to them and sort of pull them in? And that person was Valence. And then we got Brown, like the most, like Brown was on the tip of being like, yeah, I'm in it. I'm good now. I have a positive influence in my life. And then pop,
gone.
See ya. Just like the idea of like being able to play Brown like post losing Valence is the like Brown and Valence were in a relationship, but it doesn't matter for the rest of Brown's life because it's me sitting there and being like, that cake looks delicious, and I'm also tasting it while I'm viewing it. Like, I'm excited to continue to play.
It is so like juicy and productive, and like the version of Brown from that relationship ending when it does, and again, not a romantic relationship, but an intimate relationship, a very close and singular relationship that who knows where it goes on a long enough timeline, it being cut short, and then also it being tied to the material thing that now separates Brown from who they were before the Blue Channel is like incredible. It's so good. I cannot wait to see more Brown.
Great arc. Shout out to Valence.
Shout out to Valence. Valence ruled. Great character, Dre. Loved Valence. Miss them every day.
Yeah.
Pour one out.
Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
That's their nickname. Pour one out.
There's only one note that I want to make here, which is during the Kingdom game, I had just watched Starship Troopers for the first time, which is like, the space battle, but there's also this love story happening. And like the idea of having a Kingdom game and, all of the themes are about like revolution and is this party going to come together and like what are they going to be able to do together? Having like a D plot of that being Brown is mad at Valence because they helped Valence become class president. Like something I was so happy to do.
Yeah. Extremely good.
Yeah.
All right. Janine, can you read this one?
Yes, I can.
From Vikram.
Yeah. Was it just me, or was both the characters and Millennium Break itself the most morally questionable group of the ones supported by the protagonists? Like, as the show progressed, the whole branded as terrorists felt less and less propaganda and more accurate.
I think this is interesting because if you limit it to the group supported by the protagonists, I'm guessing what you mean is Saber and the Rapid Evening, right? Beforehand. And I think that you really have to understand how Empire works and how hegemony works to understand why Millennium Break killing people is not as bad as Saber participating in the perpetuation of Empire, or the Rapid Evening especially doing what Kesh wants to do, being an arm of not just like Empire loosely, but being a group of prisoners whose labor is being extorted from them and being turned into weapons of secret weapons of the state. I don't think there's anything that the revolutionary group Millennium Break could do on one tiny corner of an empire filled with oppressive forces that maps as worse to me as what something like the Rapid Evening does, right? Yeah. And that to me is like a big very much
It's
about
like a
the frame.
categorical difference.
Yeah, totally. And I also think it's important to. We got another question that I don't think is in this mix. Let me just jump ahead and just triple check really quick. But someone did ask something about like, hey, do you think the way violence or revolution or whatever would be framed differently going forward in Armor Star? Beam Saber is so clearly about the ways in which violence is tied up in war and inescapable. You cannot end the war, etc. And it's important to note that Armor Star says, I want to say like this is 13 pages in. It says, when depicting fascist and imperialistic powers, it is practically impossible not to also depict personal, relatable violence, and that everyone at the table should be in agreement about where those boundaries are in regard with where the authority, with the authority, which is the kind of empire, like mechanical term, is, and so, or what they do. And so, I think thinking forward, especially given the ending we got from the finale, we're going to continue to be in this place where what Millennium Break does is going to be, violent. It is an armed uprising. It is an armed revolution against a deeply oppressive empire that has conquered most of the galaxy. And so I don't know that we will ever move to. I mean, it would be great to move there by the end of next season. Who knows where it takes us? I don't have a game plan for it yet, which is exciting. But where they're not doing things that get them branded as terrorists, right? I think that that is part and parcel with what we have to think about when we think about what does overthrowing empire look like, and not being afraid to like. Or resisting the urge to frame it in a way that makes them acceptable revolutionaries or something like that. Because I think the second we start doing that is how you end up falling back into the logic of empire. And the second you start telling stories about like, the second that you end up doing the Rogue One thing of like Saw Gerrera is too far, and like you're spending time in your very limited story about revolution to devote to saying why the revolutionaries are the bad guys when the scale of oppression is so vastly the other direction is, I think, a mistake that comes from knowing you have to appeal. In a case like Rogue One, a movie I really like, but that you need to appeal to a vast centrist audience that feels a little icky about terrorism, or about violent revolution. And so I'm doing my best to not fall into that trap, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I also feel like we do a pretty good job of like highlighting the fact that people will join revolutions not for like pure, like ideologically pure reasons. Mm-hmm. Like most of the time it's just like they don't like they're joining this group because it's the best option here to actually change something. Mm-hmm. And that's going to like lead to complicated subject matter like this, right? Like if we're trying to play honestly, like I don't know, when I was thinking about this, I was just like trying to look at it from like the perspective of stuff that like I personally did with Millennium Break during the show. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, Millie hated all the power structures and stuff, but if you look at her actual motivation, it is to get the fuck out of there. Mm-hmm. And it always kind of was, right?
Definitely. Well, and it's interesting to me about Millie is she does get out at the end, but also becomes sort of gets out in the end, gets out of Partisan in the end, able to set up a position in life that it seems like she's more comfortable with, but that position is about bringing more people in to the fight in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
I think like, not to turn this into a Millie question, but we did low-key get the bad end for her in that regard.
Totally. I mean, it goes back to that question. Like, I was not joking at the end of the Blue Channel like escape arc when you get to the portcullis, that like when I sat down to prep that mission, that was the end of the game. That this game was not going to have a finale game. It was going to be like the end of a Hyron season where both sides just get to an ending and that's it. And like the end of that game could have been Millie and Thisbe and Brown go off to live on Collier, and that could have been it. Millie had that available, you know?
And that decision took me forever to arrive to. And honestly, I think if like we could go back, it would have been more honest to do that, to sort of like show this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm happy with the finale we got and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like also now that Millennium Break is like an established thing, going forward, we have more space to explore this sort of thing too.
Totally.
And like maybe, I don't know, clarify some of the messiness that comes with this sort of organization.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's, for me, the big thing with the finale was like, we have to get past the identity crisis for Millennium Break. And once we have that situated, we can start telling stories inside of whatever framework that looks like, whether that is Millennium Break is a state or Millennium Break is an insurgency, right? And we've landed on that latter, and that means that we can start telling those stories now in Armor Astir, which is great because Armor Astir is really built for that in a real way. So that did work out in the favor of Armor Astir. Anyone else have any thoughts here?
I think, like, for me, this is also just like a big question of not necessarily just revolution, but like storytelling. Like, the more characters you give me who are pure in what they believe and what they do and stuff, the less I believe the entire group. Like, it you know, if you give me a couple of those characters whose motivations are genuinely benevolent, who, you know, act in what is as close as possible to a sort of pure good course of action, they're believable if there's only a few of them. But like when you have a whole crew that is acting in that way, it gets harder and harder to buy in, because like even people who are doing good things for good reasons have motivation that can seem selfish, or have background, have history that can kind of lead them off course. Like when you're telling a story about people who are often being empowered for the first time and dealing with that, just as believable characters, they could, should, and will fuck up. And sometimes they're going to fuck up in really, really big, bad ways. And that kind of has to be part of it, especially if you are telling, you know, as we keep going back to, if you're telling a war story, like if you show me a cast of characters who get everything right, it's like, okay, cool fairy tale. Like this is, it, you know, it's not going to work for me.
Totally. We have another question coming up that's sort of about that, so we'll wrap back around a little bit. Any other thoughts, or do you want to jump ahead to the next question? All right, Keith, can you read this one from Simon?
Sure. The year is 2020X. The Partisan anime has just aired its last episodes, and it was exactly how you imagined it. You were about to make your own AMV about the show, obviously, other than the Make Damn Sure Balance AMV. What sort of AMV do you make? What would the theme of your AMV be? What are some shots from the show you would include? What song do you use?
I really love Keith's complete non-doing the ship pronunciation.
Yeah,
of
it's
that.
fine. Yeah.
It was just like Keith setting the fandom on fire.
Sorry. Sometimes you just got to roll through.
Yeah.
Do I need to retake it?
No, you're good.
Balance.
No, you're good. The way you said it was
Thank
right.
you.
It's done.
I would make a Millie Brown video. It wouldn't be a shipping video, but it would be like them and all their coolest mech moments. And it would be to My Chemical Romance's Thank You for the Venom.
Oh my god, this is incredibly close to what I have attempted to do. Romance song.
Blast.
High off the same album.
When we recorded Partisan, I was listening to Three Cheers on repeat the entire time, basically. Just like on 10% volume.
Amazing.
It's time to sit down and
That rules.
record Partisan and listen to this album.
I don't have one on the top of my head. Is anyone else?
Yeah, I don't have one off the top of my head, but I know I'd get it wrong. It would be produced badly, or like there'd be a very visible watermark over something. The digital zoom would have zoomed in.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah,
it would be a AMV of all of like Clem fucking up or getting into trouble, running away from things, fighting things, and it would be set to JPEG Mafia's "I cannot fucking wait till Morrissey dies."
Oh boy, that'd be great.
My my original answer for this was a like kind of upbeat, slightly haunting supercut of every like big mech fight, or every time like a big thing got fucked up, set to Cirque's Destroy She Said. But I think my actual answer is like every time Thisbe went fucking beast mode, set to Mindless Self-Indulgence's Shut Me Up.
Yeah.
That'd be very good.
I want to see a Divine fan cam, and the first 5 comments are just people saying, "No, don't do this.
Stop it."
That was mine. I'm not. I've never watched an AMV to completion. I've seen maybe 5 total minutes of AMV content in my life. So I don't have. I maybe don't have the tone here. I don't know the stable of songs that make sense here.
Sure.
But I would do all of the times that a Divine did something terrible set to Tiny Tim's "Living in the Sunlight."
Oh, Keith's
And
what's just an
I'm
open
afraid
book.
that-
Hates Divines. Love it.
I got 3.
Good.
I'll go from most serious to least serious. Most serious, my Valence AMV would be Bon Iver's "The Wolves."
Good.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
I would make an Oxblood Clan AMV to System of a Down's BYOB.
Yes. Good. Amazing.
And then I would do an Olympics AMV to Fort Miners "Remember the Name."
Amazing.
I have one more.
Oh my god. Sorry, I have to laugh at that so much. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, Sylvie.
It's just a Lacrimosa Drive compilation set to Break Stuff by Limp Bizkit. I don't think the name.
Oh, that's so good.
But yeah.
Art, did you have something there?
All I have is the Lucille Bluth answer of "I don't understand the question and I won't respond to it."
Okay, good. Great.
What's our "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor" and or "Bring Me to Life" moment?
I was
Let the
going to say
Bodies
who
Hit the
gets
Floor
a
is all
Linkin
the bodies.
Park song.
Bring Me to Life is Thisbe and Brown Fall.
Yeah.
That's good.
Also, that could work to almost any Kingdom Hearts theme song. Just anyone falling dramatic.
Fair.
That's true. And then what was the other? What was the "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor"? That's what is that? I was gonna say Brown, but Brown's just not as like the bodies that Brown makes hit the floor don't do it in like a big aggressive way because it tends to be terrible chemical weapons most of the time.
Is it just the glory fight?
Oh, it's the glory fight. Yeah, that makes sense. It's the glory fight. Yeah. All right. Next question. Who's not read one in a while?
I could.
Oh, go ahead, Sylvie. I'll read the next one.
All right.
Okay,
This is from Mike. One of my favorite things in Partisan was the way you played with audience nostalgia, employing callbacks to fan favorite moments and characters, but doing so in a way that created friction rather than providing comfort. Powerful secret organizations become the pet projects of despots. A beloved character returns as an instrument of war, spouting one-liners. It's not that the moments don't land, they very much do. Is that the new context of these callbacks rubs against our memory in a way that can feel uncomfortable. Between this and the framing of the finale, I was wondering, during planning and playing this season, did you have any meta-narrative goals when evoking fan nostalgia? What does Partisan say about the ways we frame the past?
Totally. I very much had rules about how to do this because I knew I wanted to do it, mostly because in Twilight Mirage we very much barely did it. There's like a brief hit of the Rigger Bell at one point in Twilight Mirage, and then there is like a reference to a kind of open thread that never wrapped up regarding like a MacGuffin from Counterweight. Whereas here, I knew I didn't want to touch Twilight Mirage much, but I really wanted to touch Counterweight and bits of Twilight Mirage where it made sense, but not character ending stuff. And the big through line here, the two things are: one, never anything that I can't explain in 20 seconds without referencing a specific episode or anything like that. So for instance, the design of Gucci's mech, the Transgress Oblige, it has a reference to some Twilight Mirage stuff, and that is meant to very quickly, I had to be able to evoke that, like, oh, it does this thing when you see it in all its glory. And I can explain that without talking about what that reference actually is. So that was one thing. And then two is, it should always be unsettling, and it should always represent that one of the things you lose to Empire is control of your own history. That you don't get to tell the story of what happened anymore. And so when you look at characters like Laurel, who are explicitly a bastardization of a character from Counterweight, when you look at the way that Clementine ends up with the Panther at the beginning of the season, it's supposed to be insulting. It's supposed to really underscore that heroism doesn't get to remain heroism in the face of imperialism. Imperialism will take it for its own. It will take your heroes and make it theirs. And then over the course of play, like A.O. Rook ends up with the Panther, right? And you can take it back. You can fucking grab it by the throat and pull it back and fight for it a little bit there. But I always wanted to be unsettling. I always wanted to be upsetting. It could never be comforting because people have lost control of history, right? Past has all of history. And no one gets to have access to it. They have to go to the palace. They have to go through the palace to look at the past, and the palace has been scrubbed and controlled, and that means that the narratives of history have been controlled by the principality. And when that's the case, you can't rely on history to guide you anymore. You can't find the stories of actual resistance and rebellion. You can't look for the role models who could help explain what heroism in conflict looked like, because they've all been turned into symbols of the state, and specifically symbols of an oppressive state, and not a state that has anything but the worst interest in mind for its people. And so yeah, that was a huge part of how I wanted to do that. And then the other half of it is just with Twilight Mirage stuff specifically. I wanted to honor, so there's a couple of times in the season where I reference, like, hey, the people in Twilight Mirage are watching this happen, right? They're looking on from a distance. I think that was like End of Kingdom. There's like a zoom out maybe. I think that was the End of Kingdom. And then something maybe one other place in the season. A little gesture, and I think it was important for me to underscore that the victories of Twilight Mirage maintained to be the victories of Twilight Mirage for now, right? Like, I'm not taking anything away there, because to do so would be a betrayal of what the players achieved, right? So yeah, we'll see what happens next season. Like, I'm excited for a player to say they want to bring in something from Twilight Mirage next season, because we'll have had that removed to where it feels like it's fair play. So, if during the offseason someone says they want to bring in one of those fleets I talked about, or want to reference what's going on Choir, like, you let me know. We'll talk about it. We'll figure something. We'll figure something out, So we'll see. Any other thoughts about past season connections or anything like that? I guess, Jack, musically, there's a couple of little moments here, right?
I'm as reluctant as you are to bring back these, to make callbacks. In part because it's like we did that. We're telling another story. But I do think what you were talking about in terms of the way Empire is ransacking history and is drawing it back, and it's coming back in weird ways, was definitely something that I aimed for. Some of the first notes that you sent me, music-wise, were like, this sounds too much like Twilight Mirage.
Yeah.
And the thing takes on its own character eventually. Like, if we had decided to just keep writing in the Twilight Mirage style but tell this story, the soundtrack would have transformed as we were making it. Like, I feel confident that we could have used that instrumentation and brought something different out of it. But at the same time, the choices that I made in terms of evoking Twilight Mirage instrumentation was always, make this thing harder to listen to, make this thing more aggressive. There are these horrible high bell-like synths that like drown in their own distortion that show up, I think, for the first time during Valence's death, and I love the sound of them so much that I kept using them. And those are just bells from Twilight Mirage that I have done work on. And by that I don't mean that it's like, and there's some narrative link, it's not like there's a secret Twilight Mirage message here. It's more just the physical structure of the story we're telling has come from somewhere before it, and that is going to keep coming up. The most recent example that I can think of is towards the very end. You have this great description of people watching the Girondolia particles in the sky at night, and I know that's not a Twilight Mirage reference, and we never talked about that being a Twilight Mirage reference. But I felt like on some level you were evoking the sort of skyscapes of things like the Mirage, but doing it with such a light touch. You weren't really saying anything about the Mirage. You were just trying to bring us into a similar space. Yeah. And so in that moment with the music, I definitely tried to act as lightly as you did there, and just shift the color of those chord progressions slightly more towards that, but never going any further. At one point when we were dealing with the thing in the ice in the north, I know we had a lot of conversations about like, do we want to specifically fake people out? Do we? Yeah, exactly. And it ended up not being the place for it, and that's I'm fine with that. There's so many horrible things that scream in Partisan, so many miserable, horrible screaming things. That making another miserable, horrible screaming thing didn't seem like a particularly necessary call at that point.
Totally. Well, and there's a degree to which that fake out. I'd already leaned as hard as I could on the fake out, the ice fake out. You know what I mean? Like they're digging for something in the ice. If you the audience gets that one way or another, I'm evoking that part of counterweight, right? And I don't know that we needed that hard hit, especially given what was there. And maybe irony of ironies, my favorite thing about this, my favorite little this is how actual play podcasts work, is in both that case, Rigor, I'll just say Rigor from Counterweight, and Logos Cantel being in the prison at the end of Partisan, I stumbled over the same thing both fucking times. Back in Counterweight, there was a moment in one of the faction games where I end up doing a huge lore dump about Rigor, and then we cut it from the episode. And we go like, that's not the way to debut all that information. It sucks to do it like this. This isn't fun. And then we sat on that for like months until we found the right place for Rigor to be really debuted narratively. Like, obviously, Rigor was still, I think, visible. Dre or Sylvia, you'll have to remind me if you remember, but like that sequence where a character finds out stuff about Rigor, that gets cut, but Rigor itself still showed up, right?
Yeah, I think we just cut back on, like, I think Natalia Greaves was the person who got like the info dump.
Yeah,
back on a lot of that.
Like, shout out to Natalia Greaves.
Imagine remembering any name from.
I remember all the counterweight ones. Counterweight ones are the ones that are drilled in my head. I could probably name everybody.
I don't even remember names from the current season.
12th.
All right, let's go. Alphabetically or chronologically?
Oh, no. Chronologically. Chronologically, way easier, because I can think about arcs, and I can think about, like, Orth Godlove was there, and the waitlist were there, which means that like, that whole, the Queen's Gambit crew, was there and stuff like that. Anyway, T. Kenridge. I don't remember her crew's name, but T I remember, obviously. The other, so that was in Counterweight. There was that like, oh shit, we shouldn't reveal this yet. And then in this season, at the end of Kingdom, one of the things that Keith had predicted, or I guess not Keith, but Leap, or not Leap, you were playing Apparatus. Apparatus had predicted was that the curtain would strike back, right? That the curtain would hurt, Millennium Break somehow in response, or maybe not hurt Millennium Break, but use some of the maybe it was that they would use some of the exemplar parts, or I don't remember the exact prediction. I don't really want to go look it up right now. But there was some prediction there, and the way that scene played out originally was that you basically wound up with a photo of Logos Cantel in prison. And so that was known by everyone in the party, but it was so bad. It was like, I knew I wanted to pull the trigger on that, but I didn't. It felt so bad to just like give you the information loosely like that, because it was just like flat and bad, and like that's not the way to find out that information. And so we did the second miracle instead, the greening of the icy north basically, and then that put me in an interesting position where I had to then juice that reveal up, because if I had to hit you with it, it had to still be creepy and weird, even though you knew that that Logos Cantel was somewhere. And also, I don't even know if you remembered that Logos Cantel was going to be at the Casmata Quarry at that point. We didn't talk about it again for 6 months or whatever until you got there, right? But
I remembered that.
Okay, but what no one knew about was what they were doing with Logos Cantel, which ended up being the kind of Sleep No More, like living play stuff, trying to trick them into doing stuff via immersive theater, and it's gross and terrible. And so I had to like raise they have them to they're doing this thing with them, and I had already known that that's what they were doing, but I had to really lean into it to really evoke some sort of creepiness, and I think that came across. I remember Art specifically at some point just goes like, I hate this or something. And it's very good. It's very good.
Allie.
Yeah, Allie, the robot thing is happening.
Oh, okay. Give me 1 second.
What is that?
Yeah, that's
kind of wish
great.
this was happening when we talked about Brown and Valence, because what if Brown became a robot?
What if Brown became a robot?
Yeah,
It would have sounded like that.
That's more like what if Brown became one of those 1980s talking dolls with the
I was
going to
say like a talking picture book with the buttons. I don't know if y'all ever had one.
Oh yeah,
like some sort of like old school desktop ghost. Like if Brown had haunted.
Oh, this is my favorite itch.io game.
Yeah.
I love this shit. I'm scared or whatever.
Yeah, yes, totally. Dre, you said you'd read the next one, right?
Yes.
I'm back. Hi.
Welcome back.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Much less roboty.
Yeah, you sound like you. And not like a singing birthday card.
Somebody or something. We'll figure it out. Before we move on, I just want to say really briefly that like part of what I kept in my mind through this season, I think it was a little divisive amongst the audience, but like I really tried to keep in mind of like how divines were what's the word that I want? Predicted?
Depicted?
Depicted. Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
And like part of the Brown asepsis stuff is like part of knowing that like Brown would never be able to have the relationship with divines that other PCs in other seasons did. Like that's just taken from them, from society and how it grew, and like how the stuff at the very end of Twilight Mirage with regards to divines happened via Brown's life, and like how they would think of that stuff. Like the other thing that I kept in mind is that like Adarm had a specific goal that was like, we want to build a machine that can destroy divine.
Yep.
And thinking of Brown as someone who had that background, like it's just zeros and ones for them, right? There's just like no emotional attachment in terms of being like, oh well, this thing is something different than the other tools that I use. So that was fun. I think people
I also will say like that was always this is the season divines I needed to be as scary as possible, and I think they've always been frightening in moments, right? They've always had the moments where they disregard the agency of the people that worship or work for them. They've always had the sort of like reach that can be very frightening. But coming off of Twilight Mirage, where we also had very intimate relationships between player characters and divines, or where we had a vision of divines as a stand-in for like what if social systems functioned correctly, and had the resources they needed to treat people well, etc. I really had to swing really hard the other way, and that meant mechanically too. Like I played divines as hard as I could. I think at some point, maybe the first time you deployed Asepsis, I said you're never going to be able to deploy this without it being desperate. Like it's always desperate.
Yeah.
Because the result is going to be, it's always that risky. It's always that big. And you're never going to fight a divine, especially not someone like Motion, without it really pushing you to the brink, because they represent something so large and so dominating. Not just powerful, but dominating. They are the vehicle by which, metaphorically and literally, those in power remain in power. And are at once not just tools for the powerful to do that, but are the powerful doing that in many cases. And so I always had to make the divines feel like there was some additional risk involved, which is also why in the finale, the third fight was a fight you could lose, in a way that the first two fights were not really about victory, but the third fight required a certain number of like successes. And I figured you'd get it, but I wanted that added little boost of tension for that last one. All right. Any other thoughts on nostalgia or callbacks before we move on? All right, Dre, do you want to read this one from Remy?
Yeah. One thing that surprised me as the season went on and took its revolutionary shape, it surprised me how many of the main PC cast didn't seem terribly invested in that premise, other than for how it would benefit them individually. Sure, Valence took a strong stand against injustice. The farmer used to carry that fire with him, and Kalar is fully bought in. But for several of the crew, their motivation felt like their motivation was really only extended to, this is my ticket out of here. I'm curious as to what the session 0 for this campaign looked like, given how few firebrands and true believers we wound up with.
I do think we have a session 0 up on the site that is the session 0, right? There was not any other separate session 0 outside of the road to Partisan. But I think one of the early things that we say in that episode 0 is that you should be playing characters that reflect living in a world more oppressive than ours, where information is even more shaped by empire than the one that we currently live in. Obviously,
which is already extremely
shaped, right? But like, we're able to have this conversation on a mass, communication network without secret police. We said earlier in this podcast that empires deserve to have insurgencies, right? You could not do that in the Principality. There isn't a mechanism for that sort of conversation, right? Because one day we might not have that mechanism available to us. That is 100% a thing that could be taken from us any day now. Absolutely, the January 6th attacks could lead on the Capitol, could lead to further restrictions of free speech from the left about what is an acceptable way to withstand or fight against imperialism and state violence. That could happen in our lifetimes, and so we had to start from there, and then think about. And the thing I asked all of you to do is like think about someone who has not yet had any interaction with revolutionary politics. Start with someone who can have a personal reason for wanting things to be different, but doesn't quite yet have the organizational, relationships, has not had any encounters with, revolutionary thought, and has not been tied to any groups that have actively fought for that in a way beyond personal gain. And at that point, even the Oxblood clan at the start of the season is like looking for a bigger paycheck. They're not looking to overturn, the Principality. That's out of that's not something they could dream about at that point. And so I think that probably shaped people, but I'm also curious from your perspectives here, for sure.
I think that there's like there's a way that what I can say can be taken as sort of pessimistic, but I don't feel like it's pessimistic. So like whatever the non-pessimistic version of this is, take it that way. But it's like, you know, if you're talking about like a revolution, you don't need an army of people whose goals are to like cast the world in a new light for some grand vision of the future society, as much as like these people were putting their lives on the line. They were fully bought in. Like the reason that they were bought in was because they had personal reason. I don't want to live in this world. I want things to be different. I'm going to fight for this. Like, it sounds selfish, but it's like if you have an army of people who are all fighting for the same thing for themselves, that's a movement. That's a revolutionary army. Like, I don't think that that everyone has to have like this I don't think everyone has to have worked
theory,
out for themselves,
right? Like you don't.
Yeah,
need
you don't have to
to
have.
To be a revolutionary.
Yeah, and like some people do, some people don't. But like, if you're there with a gun, killing people with that gun, boom, you're bought in.
Yeah, and Leap was there with a gun.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about their characters and buying in? And anyway, I know Janine, you already kind of hit this a few questions ago to some degree, right?
Yeah, I think like it's part of the reason that I think it's more believable if you have people who aren't purely motivated by this sort of ideal concept of justice and rightness and all of that, is that like it can be both. Like you can say this is unfair and also that
is unfair.
You can say this system is unfair and this isn't right, and you can also say like, and I'm suffering, or I don't like what's happening to me. And like in many ways, the person who acknowledges their selfish interest is likely to fight very hard for the right thing that they also acknowledge is there. Like it's, I think the story of liberalism right now, right, is that people who are comfortable don't fight very hard, and people who are uncomfortable fight very hard, or fight harder. Usually, there are exceptions to that, but personal stakes and personal motivations make for better characters in general, and it can't just be, like I said before, if you give me a party full of people who have these really like benevolent and laudable and amazing motivations and beliefs and don't have any selfishness in there, I don't believe any of them.
Totally.
Oh,
we got that. Allie,
you're a pull cord doll again.
Hi, hello. I'm bye. Goodbye.
That's what they say. That's what the dolls say.
Bye. Thanks for stopping. Bye.
Hello,
Extremely
hi.
unsure doll. they had one take. They had one take to record the lines for the doll. She forgot her lines, and they kept it. Pushed the doll out.
Release the doll. Amazing.
It's like the balloon. It's like the balloon kid in Five Nights at Freddy's. One of those. Remember when they introduced the balloon kid, who would show up with balloons? It was like the second one or something.
No.
The balloon kid would just be like, "Hi," and then you'd get murdered if you didn't do something specific. I don't know.
Do I sound like a balloon kid?
No, you're good.
No, you sound
you're good.
You're good. You're good now.
This
You're good
is
now.
concerning.
Yeah.
But it's fine. Yeah, I had fun playing Brown. And Brown was definitely like a very specific column on this. I think with Brown, it was a tough thing. It was like part of a personal reason to play Brown that way, because like I was in a place where I was trying not to create roots, and like pushing that to its extremes in just being a jerk into a microphone was really fun. And then just sort of thinking about like what in situations like this where people sort of have to come together for a shared goal, or sort of advocate for themselves because they just don't have any support otherwise. Like the worst version of that is reacting like everybody else is trying to hurt you. There's like the idea that Brown always had that like Gucci is a bad person who doesn't actually care about me. And if it was a choice between me and Gucci, at any point Gucci would choose herself. And like that is not a great reading on Gucci. And like the Brown's inability to try to see something in other people that was worth reaching out towards, or like worth finding common ground with, or like being vulnerable with, is a bad response to the situation that they're in. And I think that's worth depicting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a very I don't know that we've had a character quite like that before. I think maybe Adair gets close in some ways. That's that feeling of like, I'm not letting anyone in, but obviously Adair's arc is Adair's arc. And seeing Brown, I mean, there was a real moment when someone asked this earlier, we kind of moved past it, but like where the end of that Kingdom game, we went into that Kingdom game thinking what we would end with was a party shuffle, not unified party, right? We thought that we might end with the Rapid Evening becoming Clem, Brown, and Thisbe or something like that. And then the other half of the party, or maybe there'd be 3 parties, who knows? Maybe SI stays with Clem and Brown and Thisbe or something like that. And we don't get that, but like we recognize that Brown was in a position to be pulled into the orbit of whoever the most powerful person with a paycheck to offer was there, right?
There was, when we went into the Kingdom game, it was definitely, my idea was like, Brown is going to sell information about somebody to somebody. And then they would leave the Kingdom game with a uniform for an office and healthcare. And like, that's the thing that Clem would have provided for them. And they would have been like, good, I got what I needed. And the shift from Brown, and like, the shift from Brown, especially at the end of the Kingdom game, as like understanding them as like a organizational part of Millennium Break in a real way, was like, oh, okay, so they do have this responsibility to people now. And like the way that they were actually able to get people to engage with them or like find value in them was like to actually genuinely do this and genuinely use their skills for like food and communication and things in that way. So like, they still they didn't get the healthcare plan, but they got the like Millennium Break patch to put on their jacket and like somewhere to sleep every night. And it was like, that's just as good, I guess. The second thing, it's funny that you mentioned Adair, because I remember one time where I was like, oh, okay, it'll be fine doubling down with Brown in this way, is when there was like an early Thisbe Brown bond that we were trying to figure out, because like the basics of what I wanted the bond to be, I think it was the second one where it was like, I want to see what Thisbe is willing to pay to get out of here or whatever. Like the meat of what that I really wanted that to be was like, I was imagining a scene in like 3 weeks or whatever where like it was revealed that like Brown was pocketing all of Thisbe's like saber earnings and spending it on their spaceship, or like trying to get it out of Thisbe in that way so they could get a spaceship, or like just do what they wanted to do because that's what Brown does. And I remember having a conversation with Janine and being like, I don't want to just play Adair back at you. And Janine was like, oh my god, no, you should do that, please do that. And I was like, oh, okay, got it.
I mean, that was, because Adair and Hela was the manipulator and muscle combo. So the idea of, especially early on, of flipping that was like totally fine with me. And I think I even carried like, I carried that in with one of Thisbe's later bonds about like Brown. Was it a bond or was it a thing in the end of the, I don't remember. But there's a thing about like Brown lies to me because they believe I'm a person. Which is like a very complicated belief in terms of it's very tied up in Thisbe's own self-image. But you know, the underpinning there is that like is Thisbe, one, being able to recognize lies, and two being able to recognize that Brown perceives her as being worth lying to for some reason, or like there being a value for Brown to lie to her. The thing I was going to say that I think differentiates Brown and Adair a lot, though, is that Adair didn't want to let people in, but she wanted to be in. You know, she wanted she wanted other people to let her in because that let her take advantage of them better. Whereas I don't think Brown had that same, at least it very rarely seemed like Brown wanted to be let in. Brown like wanted a good working relationship with people. But there was an arm's length quality that felt a little more underscored with Brown than with Adair. Adair like wanted you to think that you were a best friend.
Brown, not so much.
Not so much.
I had a lot of fun playing with Thisbe in the season, and especially there was like ways in which I wanted to make sure that Brown was being mean to Thisbe in a way that you would be rude to a person and not to a robot, because that is two very different things. And then like before the first the mission where we go to the forest and Thisbe is like, well, I really want to go to this forest, and Brown being like, well, is this important to you? It's one of my favorite Brown moments, because it's like, yeah, that's a genuine question, and Brown ends up genuinely agreeing to that because it is important to Thisbe. But like the I'm gonna check first though, it's really fun for me. So yeah,
I think that the Brown Thisbe kind of, or relationship was always so interesting to me, because like there is, especially in the first half, it's easy to perceive it as Brown buys Thisbe from the back of a truck, and then Thisbe is like an asset owned by Saber Industry, you know, by the Society of Banners and Bright Returns. But then there's like a 6-month period of post Kingdom where like Thisbe's doing whatever Thisbe wants. That makes it very clear that Brown has not been like, all right, Thisbe, come with me and carry my shit. And reveals to me that like Brown, it goes back to the thing that Janine, you were saying of like, for some reason Brown treats me like a person, because Thisbe didn't ever consider herself a person in that way, but Brown did, but also was just mean because Brown is fucking mean. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the terrible thing not the terrible thing, the thing maybe to recognize is if Thisbe had been just someone from Orion, Brown probably would have treated her very similarly. And Brown is just miserable at people.
Yeah. I think also like a thing that gets forgotten is like really, really early on, maybe in character setup or something, or in like the first arc, we established that like at some point, you know, Brown had purchased Thisbe. Thisbe was being sold by you know, mercenaries,
right?
people who stole her away or who purchased her and etc. But the thing that happened off camera before we started the show, and you know this, you know, we said this, I know we did, was that at some point Brown realized that Thisbe was not just you know, a hauling robot kind of thing, and started treating Thisbe more like part of the crew, even if they still treat Thisbe poorly. You know, it's still, Thisbe is still not just lifting boxes, which is the thing that Thisbe ends up doing sometimes when she's left on her own.
Right.
Brown still gives Thisbe that seat at the table,
even if that's not in their mind a thing they're doing positively or something.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thisbe. All right. Anything else here on revolutionary ideals or bio?
I just like really quick. I think that one of the things with Millie was like there was parts of the season, especially I think like right after the Kingdom game, where I don't know. I felt like I was playing her as pretty bought in, and then like things went bad, and she got disillusioned again. And like, I don't think that it's like, I don't know. I don't think that it makes up for like if you're looking to have more of these true believer characters. I don't think it's going to fix that. But I do think that like, I don't know. I'm very happy with that because it felt. I don't know. It felt realistic to me.
Yeah.
Just it, you know, people even in revolutions sometimes feel like they're not important. You know?
Really? Yeah.
Look, it's rough
hits.
out here.
It's rough out here. It truly is. Millie clearly proved her importance as clear as anyone else ever could to Millennium Break.
It's like real quick, but it's like, as far as I'm concerned, it's like big tasks and small tasks, where often when we talk about like, are they bought in? Or what do we actually mean when we're talking about that? Is it like, are they bought into an ideal of freedom and justice for all? Okay, what are the small tasks? It's like, what does Kalal want? Oh, he wants to go home and see his family. Or more specifically, he wants his family to be able to come home to him. Does that mean he's morally compromised or he's acting selfishly? Not at all. That's like a way in which that is a lens through which he is expressing this broader concept, this kind of fairly unworkable concept of like, I want freedom and justice. Well, what does that mean? And how are you gonna fight for that? Sometimes that's, I want to be paid. I don't have enough right now to eat, and I want to make sure that I can eat, and I want to be able to sleep at night while I'm doing that. Or it's like, oh, I think that this city is being threatened by something. I'm not just gonna go out there and say like, oh, I think someone else should own Cruciat. Cool, good. What are we talking about here? Like, my motivation might be like, I want to be able to go back to my house in Cruciat.
Right.
And that reflects something I care about more broadly. So I think when we are talking about the like, characters don't necessarily seem to be bought in, maybe what we are looking at is their smaller scale, is them having broken down that question to its smaller parts.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Why do we want a revolution? Well, we want things to be better for us and people that we love.
Yeah, big same. And we'll see more of this in the second season of Partisan, right? Where we know what Millennium Break is, where we know how they are aligned, not just ideologically, but structurally and materially. Right. And maybe we'll get some more firebrands. I don't know. Obviously, we will have at least a couple of new characters, right? From maybe at least with Sovereign Immunity, right? Was gone. So Art, we'll see someone new from you. We'll see who's what in next time we come back to this place. All right. Next question. We only have 2 left, so I will. Who wants to read this one? I'm going to read the last one. So who wants to read?
I mean, there's an obvious choice.
Jack, could you read this one?
And Jack, you can just ask us. Well, you don't have to send.
I'm back. Hello.
Hi, Jack. You wrote us this question. You did not write this question, but someone else named Jack did.
Hi, my name is Jack, and I have a question. One of the biggest structural changes this season was the Road to Partizan series of games, which helped build the world and kick off thematic elements that were expanded upon. I know how the Road to Partizan series changed my experience as a cast member of this show. I felt much more like an insider, an anthropologist of this world. But I'm curious as to how those Road to Partizan games may have changed your experience as players. How did aspects, events, themes, characters, history, or whatever from the pre-season games impact your choices on the main season? I'll take my answers via Discord or whatever. You can just message me when you get the chance.
Austin, was Columnar, was that Road to Partisan, or was that after Road to Partisan?
You knew you wanted to play
that's my easy answer.
That you knew you wanted to play a robot person, and I was like, where are they from? What do they do? What's their vibe? What's a robot person doing here? And so we brainstormed Columnar stuff and then introduced it in Microscope, right? And kind of like played out the way that they were courted, the courting of the Columnar Tabulary. which was so fascinating because I wanted the fifth stele to be, or one of the five steles to be, this sort of like liberal, liberal state at the margin of the crushing boots of imperialism. Still Orion had established itself by expanding into the one arm of the galaxy that's just massive, and they've just like conquered all of it. Apostolos is pushing in on the Golden Branch and fighting as hard as they can to capture territory there. Sels, Nadeo, and Kesh had been the heart of the Principality and had been the ones that brought Orion in via conquest, or Orion and Apostolos in via conquest. And so I wanted there to be some group that was like, no, we don't do the war. We just don't. No, you could vote here. This place is nice, actually. We're really cool. Sure, we benefit from the imperial conquests of the state we're part of. And sure, we support them through the development of technologies and propaganda and everything else. But our hands are clean. And that felt like a really great place to reintroduce or where that group could enter, and where your specific idea of this sort of marginalized, subgroup inside of a majority group could really exist. And the Equiaxed fit that so well. I really love what you did with them. And so setting them up through Microscope really, really helped and gave grounding for someone like Leap to show up. And then for people who are getting still, the postcards are coming. The postcards are on their way. We are on now the last postcard, I think, in terms of designing it. Jack, you and I still have to figure out the exact narrative final step on it. But that story ended up being about an Equiaxed group too. And all of that comes from the work that you did, Keith, both in the Microscope game, but then also just like, as we talked about, who the Equiaxed are, what Columnar was. So,
yeah. That's I feel like that is the most. I guess we didn't spend. We spent a lot of time with Leap. We didn't spend a ton of time with any Equiaxed aside from Leap.
Yeah.
But it was still like, I feel like the biggest single thing that I've done in Friends of the Table, probably,
in terms of developing part of like a culture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Because normally I play small. Like, I don't normally come with ideas like, I have a whole group of people.
No, but you did it. It was great. You should do it more. It's fun. I like it.
Yeah,
when
it was
you
a
do
ton
that.
of fun.
It's great.
But I feel like that's the thing, is Road to Partisan felt like that was.
Yeah.
It felt like a place to do something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other Road to Partisan thoughts here from people who played as them, as characters or as storytellers?
I have like no concept of how to answer this question because I don't know how anything impacts the choices I make during play. I just have like
this is that determinism question that we were talking
of
about
my own
yesterday, Art.
Yeah, I just have no knowledge of my own process. It's just when it's happening, my brain is disconnected from all past and future.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
You're in the zone.
Galaxy brain.
Yeah. Galaxy brain, but like not.
But head empty. Head empty galaxy brain. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, galaxy outside, nothing inside.
Well, what I'll say is I'm really glad we got Memphis Longhand. And the continued adventures of Memphis Longhand in our Sports Are Numerology game halfway through the season.
Yeah, and I'm excited to tell people that Magic Memphis Longhand is the season. No, it's not.
It's
but
not. That's
that
not.
would be crazy.
Defrosted like Demolition Man or you know.
Is there a sports clone movie?
There's gotta be.
It feels like there should be, but I don't know what it is.
God, Memphis Longhand, but now he knows magic. God,
yeah.
Incredible. Oh, yeah, you already said magic. When you said that, I thought you were making a Magic Johnson joke.
Oh, no, Memphis Magic Longhand? No.
Yeah.
No, literally magic.
Magical, yeah, got it.
Yeah.
My answer to this is ask me at the end of next season. How the Road to Partisan affected.
Yeah, totally. That's fair. I mean, whatever. You're playing a robot based on the Haifa who we.
No, I mean season 7.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah,
Asking at the end of season 7 how the road to Partizan.
Yeah, Stay tuned to Drawing Maps to find out the answer to that one. You said it to me a couple days ago. What else? Anyone else? For me, obviously, it was so good to do all that stuff, and to do all the lead-in drawing map stuff because it helped me just know the world. I lost it, like completely lost it in the most joyous way after we finished the first Rapid Evening game and had a tense negotiation about the remains of a broken divine between two major political players that was coherent in the first arc of a game. Being able to have that sequence where you sit across from Cassilier, Clem, or Jack as Clem, and negotiate the like salvage rights between two giant, substates was so like it hit the mark. We did it. We managed to be able to do something in this sort of like Crusader Kingsy space without a ton of lore dump, because we had actually secretly done a ton of lore dump via Road to Partisan. And even if
hours
and
hours,
and even if you didn't listen to that, it made the players and made me as the GM confident enough to talk in the terms of the world in a way that you could have a scene like that instead of kind of grasping at what is the shape of this place, what are the powers that be. We could have never had that scene at the start of Counterweight or Hyron or something like that, Yeah.
The Road to Partisan stuff is kind of interesting to me because I was barely involved with it.
Yeah, that was you were only in the Beam Saber game, right?
Yeah, and that was like a continuation of another game, so I was playing that and I had no idea what the fuck was going on. I liked Pigeon. That was a fun character to play. And I think did I play the same
character type? No, I think you were an ace.
No.
In the
Oh, sure. Yeah, but I remember reading it that time and being like, I would play I don't even remember what Brown's technician,
or something like that.
It was interesting for Brown being so outside of it, and then also creating Brown, and then being like, oh, they can just be a character who's sort of outside of it too. The the way that I arrived at Brown, kind of being like stepped out of society was like at the first suggestion that they were Apostolician, I think. And then from there, it was just a rolling ball of like, well, what kind of relationship would they have with the society at that point? And what would it mean to try to get out of it in this society that is already so open in these ways, but like really oppressive in other ways? Like, what does it mean to be a they, them Apostolician? So that helped really get my head in the game for Brown, essentially. It's like a similar like shortcut that I took with Hella, where it's just like, I don't know this character yet, and if I could just pretend that they don't care about anything, it can kind of get past a lot of the the things I don't understand yet, or like getting comfortable with stuff. And I think that helped with Brown in terms of being like, well, fuck anybody anyway, so yeah,
totally.
It was fun playing that guy who wants to climb out of his mech and fight robots.
That guy had a name.
Was his name? His name was Smack Talk, right? I can't remember whether or not
and he had
was
a brother,
Smack and his brother was David, or whether he was David and his brother was Smack. But
you played a character with a great name called Smack Talk. I had a character without a name, and I decided. I'm going to say, this is one of my favorite jokes that I have told in Friends of the Table. I decided at the moment that this will be your brother, and that his name will be David. David Talk.
David. It's so good.
That game was great. I shout outs to Dust to Midnight by Riley Rathal. An incredible game. Really, really fun. We all had great corporation names in that game, too. Smack Talk
it was
for
like
Yes Power.
Yes Power.
And David worked for a competing power company called Better, Brighter. Loved it.
Oh, it was great. But doing the weakest part of the mech is the pilot, which was was made up completely made up, was like, oh damn, that was really fun to do a season that is all about like weird personal brutality. And at the same time writing the theme for that and beginning to lean into this noise at the end. I remember thinking to myself, oh, both of these things are really interesting to me, and then going, oh shit, we're just about to do that. Like, we can do a whole season where we explore this stuff and look through this stuff, and that was exciting. It's kind of like a teaser trailer for getting to do it.
Mm-hmm. Totally, 100%. And that's also when I was like, when we did the follow up to Dusk to Midnight and we did Beam Saber, I was like, we have to fucking play Beam Saber. That moment is so good. The weak point of a mech, and in general, it was like, again, just like, I think we could do some really fun encounters here, which is not traditionally the way we think about doing our storytelling, but inside of the mecha genre space, it's such a big part of it. And also, I'd come off of Spring and Hyron, mad at myself for the way the fight scenes in Spring and Hyron had gone. I think there were some really fun moments, obviously.
There's at least one amazing one.
I think there's a bunch of amazing ones. Players y'all did really good stuff. I wanted to give you more to play with. I wanted there to be more kind of geometry to the spaces. I wanted the spaces to have more toys to play with, more scenarios, and kind of make it more visual. I was very mad at myself for a fight in a library in Spring and Hyron that didn't use any bookshelves or books or spaces or aisles. And there's still a really great physical moment in that scene that has to do with a window and a tree outside. And so like, there were still players still did it. Y'all still did it. But I felt like I had dropped the ball on creating interesting play spaces. And so one of my big goals coming into this was to create sequences and scenes that gave people the play space to do really fun, memorable encounters and actions. And so when I played Beam Saber, I immediately, and for what it's worth, Armor Stir also gave us this. It's just that I knew that we weren't starting as a revolution, so we couldn't play Armor Stir because that's a game about a revolution. That's a game about like fighting the Empire from the jump, and so we couldn't start there. And so that really pushed me into Beam Saber, and Road to Partisan is what helped me figure that out. But when we played Beam Saber, and I was able to do that a couple of times in that play session, where there were like really fun objectives, and even though I didn't think I was as confident or strong with it as I was by the time we got to the second half of Partisan, I just knew that it fit and it worked. So yeah. And I guess also it's worth saying that like I kind of knew from the jump that I was going to try to direct the season to a second season, and that Armor Stir would be where we would get to. I didn't know any of the mechanisms there, and so a thing that you do for me as a GM and a storyteller like this is plant enough things that one of them could grow to the road to the place you want to get to, right? So like you have the exemplar parts, you have motion, you have perennial, you have the true divine, you have enough stuff out there, you have the branched to where you could get to a slightly more fantasy version of the game you're playing, and one of those things will develop in that direction. And I knew in my heart of hearts from the negotiation over Past's Body that I wanted to do a second season of Partisan. And like that early in the season, I was like, we have to stay in this world. The world is too good. We've built it with the Road to Partisan in such a way that it has legs the way Hyron had legs. And so from that point forward, I knew I wanted to work towards that. And in some ways, that made the pacing in season 1 pretty weird because it was going to end up I knew I needed to get to a certain point, but also I still didn't know how long it would be. And we went way longer than I thought we would go. I thought we would go a Hyron season length, and we still went a full sci-fi season length. Maybe not Twilight Mirage in episode count, but in hourage, it's pretty close, especially if you count Road to Partisan. So
it's funny, Partisan, I don't know, this maybe is only me. Partisan felt short to me.
Yeah, no, I think the first half felt short to me. We blew through it really quick, but I don't know. It's been a long year. It's a hard show to make. Not having my normal routines has made it despite being the easiest season to make content-wise, like it's been one of the more stressful seasons to make because of not being able to make it the way I like to make things. And that's been tough. I'm sure that's true for everyone here, that like to some degree COVID has shifted us in ways that have been difficult on top of general life changes and every other fucking thing. Like it's just been a little extra fuck you to have to get over, you know? I don't know. But I'm happy. I'm glad we were making Partisan during this year. There was a bit, Art, if you don't mind me saying this, do you remember the thing I'm about to say about the name of the season? That you raised, maybe we shouldn't call it Partisan?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Because it was an election year. And it's like, we're going to hear the word partisan over and over and over again. And I was like, you're totally right. But I think we just have to lean in. We just have to go for it. And we certainly didn't know it would be the year that it was. But I'm happy with it.
I ended up not ever seeing that come up.
Yeah, no one said it because we're so past it, right? We're so past the idea of quote unquote partisan politics in America. We're at something else at this point. So I don't know.
I would like to think our show is especially past it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, any other final thoughts here, or should we move on to the final question?
We've moved on into is it good to be a terrorist realm, which is a different space.
It's a different space. We're not really doing the do you think the show is too partisan? Spam writes in and says, "Hi, friends. I've got a question for each of you. If this were a show or a movie, and you had to orchestrate one moment where your characters or NPCs in Austin's case could do any single ridiculous thing without worrying about how it would affect play, what would they do? Like a moment to really show off how cool or doubt they were. Thank you for the wonderful season, Spam." What's the showcase moment? What's the big, the way I think of this? You know how, like, in a cartoon, there's an intro, like in an anime or a cartoon, you get, like, the X-Men intro, and it's, like, Cyclops shoots, like, 1 billion Sentinels with laser, with concussive blasts. Or, like, in an anime, you just get some wild-ass shit that doesn't happen in the show, but it looked sick, and so it's in the intro. That's what I want to know for people.
Oh. I had, like, a thing I wanted to do with my mech at some point, like a battle thing that I never did. Which was like, I had this idea if when the stray dog's in the Lacrimosa drive, it like grabbing onto something and then still using the cannon on its back at like really close range.
Ooh, that's fun.
And having to like tilt its head down to fire it. But it never happened. It just never came up. But it's cool.
That's in my mind. That'll be in the intro for sure.
Yeah.
God, I'm trying to think. I have so many NPCs. I have to pick one.
This isn't like a cool moment, but when we were talking about Phrygian before, I wanted to mention, didn't get the chance to, that like I really like Phrygian. If Brown,
I'm glad people like Phrygian. It was honestly the hardest thing that I've done. I think
you crushed it.
The most doubt that I've had.
If Brown had not had a grief breakdown that also caused the party to break down a little bit, I would have wanted more like fun Phrygian Brown like lab coat moments.
Oh, that moment, that car ride is so good.
When they, God, just like I really wanted overtime for like, because that first conversation with Brown being like, "Oh, you're a scientist." I really wanted to develop that more, and it just didn't go anywhere. But we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I think if I had like an X-Men opening, I would want like the thing that I wanted out of Sovereign Immunity that never got like on camera is the like, if Giant Killer had existed when we started, that's the playbook I would have used. Yeah. I wanted Sovereign Immunity to like beat up mechs. And so I guess my opening intro moment would be Sovereign Immunity taking a mech down with a big sight. That's the imagery that I wanted that I didn't like get to put on screen in that way.
Yeah. We were almost there a couple of times and it just didn't come together. Or you may have gotten close in like that first motion fight, right?
Oh yeah, I'm not like mad about how it happened. It's just that would be my opening scene. Because if it's in the opening credits, people think about it even if it doesn't happen,
Totally. That's true. That's science right there. Shit. God,
I have an answer for your two hypotheticals. The first one, the X-Men opening where we're seeing different action scenes. I would like to see a shot of Leap's mech bashing through a wall and into a target, but from the inside, camera inside, and you see coming through the wall, like the Kool-Aid Man. I guess if you want to think about it that way.
I do. You said it. You're like, if you want to go that way about a thing you brought up.
It's the only time I can think of someone doing that. But it's like that, but cool with a robot and it fighting. And then the shot from an anime opening that doesn't happen, which is something that we wouldn't put in the show, but I can explain it away by being like, whoever's producing the TV show gets to be in charge and make a decision that I maybe wouldn't make, but I do want to kind of see it selfishly. Is Phrygian starting out in their actual form and then shifting down into war form and then shifting down into the humanoid shape, like going from the biggest to the smallest thing,
and then like sipping tea or something. That's what would happen to the anime intro that never happened. Thank you, Allie, for reminding me that they're a scientist, because I forgot. Putting on a lab coat. Putting on the lab coat. Right. Yes. Yes.
Or like adjusting like a name tag.
Phrygian with like one of those like those plastic pen pocket protectors on their.
God, that's so funny. Yeah.
No one's told them that those suck.
No one said you look like a nerd, because what you look like is writhing cables.
Yeah, too scary to be a nerd.
Are you gonna tell him he looks like a nerd?
Anyone else?
I climb in a parade. At the head of a parade.
Oh yeah.
Just like treated with the adoration and respect that she perceives as her birthright. I think there's like ticker tape going, maybe she's riding on the back of a mech and saluting, and like.
Does she have like the Disney princess wave down? Which I think it's like 2 with the full arm and then 3 with the wrist.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it now, and this is an audio medium. Yes, definitely. And then I think Kalar is killing a divine. I think something that Kalar desperately wants to do, and is gunning for fairly constantly, is spotting a divine and killing them. I don't know if it ever happened. Did Kalar point at the divine and say, "See that big thing in the bay? I'm gonna kill the fucker," or something
like that?
I feel like that's very consistent with, and I think in the intro he's doing that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Putting a cigarette out on the broken remains of a giant neck.
Drawing, smoking a cigarette and killing gods.
You know what Brown needs? More scenes when they're in their mech with that big jewel that looks like an ocean light.
Oh yeah, those jewels. The Memoria. Yeah.
What is an ocean light?
Well, it was like a gem that was in their mech that, like, when it glowed or when it was activated or whatever, it would like make it like, when you're an ocean light. Like,
I remember the
light.
gem. The thing I don't know is ocean light.
You mean like a light seen through the ocean?
Yeah, or like when
you mean like a lighthouse?
When you're looking at a wall and like the light is moving like waves, like the ocean. Like you have like
a lamp with a thing on it.
You're introducing me to a new image.
I feel like that happens.
They're really
in
big on
life,
Instagram right now, aren't they?
This is like a spinning nightlight that like
you'll see them any tweet
like water reflection.
Any tweet.
I
feel like water with light through it also actually does that, right?
Yeah, sure, right?
It's like if you go to like a public indoor pool when the lights are off but the pool lights are on, like you get that effect.
Right.
And also Allie is right about saying like any tweet. When people's tweets go viral right now, that's like the number one product that they're getting paid to rep in the replies is these water lamp things.
Yeah.
I I appreciate that these things are popular enough to call them an ocean light, but I would never see like a flashlight shining through an aquarium and go, "Oh, an ocean light."
Yeah.
Ocean light. Let me just write ocean light in the inspiration chat here.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
put
save
down
that in the back
Ocean
pocket.
Ocean light. That's a
Yeah.
really good name.
I have an answer for that. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say for Thisbe, I have an answer, and I don't like my answer, but I have it, so you know. I think for Thisbe, it's one of those anime moments where I know these are very common. They're very commonly used for a character who is like, it's the scene where they show how like eerily elegant and precise the character is in a show that is still about fighting. I regret that the best example that comes to mind is Black Butler. But like a scene where it is just very much like maybe fighting in a garden or something, and absolutely none of the plants getting touched, but whatever she's fighting getting completely torn up, or like she rips a chunk off but then like catches it before I can crush a rose or whatever, like that kind of shit.
Totally. I think mine is actually a modification of something that got cut, which is the first time motion shows up and we have that Black Century reveal. There's a bit where I describe, and part of it's still in there, I describe the camera revealing the kind of rest of the Black Century and the hills and plains beyond, in the Barranca beyond, when she arrives and is like coming over the hill with the kind of vanguard of the Black Century. And I describe it, and this is still in the episode, of the kind of like zoom out and scale of how many more behind her. But in the original cut of that, I talk about how that vision turns a sickly monochrome and reveals the kind of like all of the weight of the principality behind her in the Black Century. And we had to cut it for musical timing reasons. But what
really?
I would yeah, 100%. Like I have a note from you, Jack. I'm sorry, it's fine. I ended
no,
up
we probably cut it for a good reason.
We did. It happens, you know. And we went back and forth on it, and you sent me a couple cuts. I was happy with the cut that we went with, but I ended up coming back to it, you know. The next time motion showed up post Kingdom, when y'all fought her in Auspice, and there's the scene of like seeing the expansion out of Motion's forces across Partisan and then across the galaxy and stuff like that. But that was supposed to be echoed first as soon as you saw Motion. And what I would do in the anime intro or the cartoon intro would be Black Century shows up, you know, the Motion beat hits. We kind of like begin to move past Motion to see the kind of like rows and rows of and columns of the Black Century behind her, and the camera speeds up and leaves Partisan behind, and then we see space, but then in space we kind of get the like just the face cut-ins of like ghostly figures of Chrysanth Kesh, the Princept of the Cynosure Kesh Princept, and then Dahlia way in the distance, kind of turning and like cautiously looking, you know, over their shoulder. Not even cautiously, but like almost like coyly looking over their shoulder. And that is where you would see, in a way that would infuriate the viewers, because we never get to Dahlia, we would see Integrity kind of clamp onto their back, revealing that they have integrity the whole season. And they're like, well, where's Dahlia? Why are we not getting to Dahlia yet? And the answer is because we'll get to Dahlia sometime in season 2. But that would be the way that Char shows up in the intro to Double Zeta and then is never in Double Zeta even once for a second. We would get that big view of the rest of the galaxy hanging over everything and kind of weighing in on the Black Century in motion. So that's mine.
Damn. Listen, if you're Netflix or anybody who's making has a lot of money, contact us.
Please do. Yeah.
You don't even have to make a show. We could just have the money.
Yeah, you could just give us the money for the rights and then not do anything with it. That sounds hard. It sounds hard to make a show, but
but you would still have to.
But it sounds good to have the rights to a show.
It does. It does sound good to have a rights to a show. So hey, if you have money and want rights, you let us.
Don't really want to make the show.
Yeah, I'd love for someone to make the show. My second choice for someone to buy the rights and not make the show.
Yeah, I'd want to watch the show. I'm curious about it, how people would adapt it.
Yeah.
They'd have to figure out a second season at some point, probably before we did. No, at this rate, they wouldn't. At this rate, we probably have 3 seasons of a show right now, right? We got a lot of a lot of content in this one season.
Totally. There's Road to Partisan 2, which is done as some
OVAs,
sort of like,
you know, that's like
or like Animatrix. Let's get different directors to do the.
Exactly.
We got a lot of slow pans and stuff, so that eats up some time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We have a whole tournament arc. You could just have
a whole
the
tournament
Olympics be
arc?
like 5 episodes.
I'm so mad we didn't get to do the
Beach
Olympics
episode.
Like that's the if I could redo one thing this season, it would be pausing Kingdom to just do the Olympics in some other system.
The Olympics. It led to one of the great callbacks, though, which is in the finale, and I can't remember who it is, but someone sees Thisbe and go, "That robot won the Olympics."
Yeah, definitely. All right. I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you, everyone who joined us. I don't know why I left this in here, but tinyurl.com/freebluff is how you can listen to all of Bluff City Season 1, which still is... I love Partisan. Bluff City Season 1 might be my favorite.
Good show.
It's a great show.
It's fantastic.
Honestly, if you just listen to Partisan, you're like, that's really good. I wish I had more friends at the table to listen to. You do. And Bluff City rules.
Bluff City's
Go
so good.
check it out.
There's so much to listen to. We do know some people, jumped on board for the first time with Partisan. I'm so happy people did that. I'm so glad that we got to make the show this year. Like I said, it has been a life raft for me in a very turbulent year. So just for my own selfish sake, I'm glad we got to make it. I hope this year is easier, regardless of the show. I don't care about the show so much as people's lives and everything. So, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting us. Anyone have final Partisan thoughts before we wrap up?
Thank you for making it with us, Austin.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you for making it with me. It's like I got to sit down and say, I want to make a season about mechs. No, really about mechs. And y'all came along with me on that shit. So, it's exciting.
We got something fun to do next that we're not going to say anything about, but I'm excited.
I'm excited. We finished. What I'll say is we finished. I just did conversations with all of you about your characters and the various kind of corners of the world that the characters you're playing help to define and help to fill in. And it was really fun doing those. Those will be a Drawing Maps bonus. There's 7 of those coming. And those were really fun because I started without any idea about names or anything. And now I have a lot of stuff to play with and synthesize before we sit down and do like a world building episode proper. And so look forward to those things. We're there. We're in pre-production. We're in production now in a real way, I guess I would say. We're just not at the season yet. So look forward to that. We'll have more to say on what that is in the next month or so, hopefully. I think that's going to do it for us. Any other final thoughts? All right. Time.is is the address.
Oh, right.
Closing time.is loop on Partisan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and it's a decent ending Partisan quote.
Do you want to read it to us, Art?
Is it?
I mean, for a time.is quote.
Read it.
Time changes everything except something within us, which is always surprised by change.
Sovereign immunity said that.
Yeah.
It being from Thomas Hardy does make me just think it's from the guy who was in Venom.
That's not.
Is
that's
that not?
who it is, right?
Yeah.
No, it's not who it is.
Thomas Hardy,
sure.
star of the movie Venom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually his character in Inception said that, and then he said, "You've got to dream bigger, darling," and then shot a grenade launcher. It was sick. It was sick as
He was
shit.
sitting backwards on a chair at that time.
Yeah.
This is
That
honestly a
plans
really
were
good
wrong.
quote from an actor. I mean, I say as someone who is basically an actor for a living now. I don't know what.
That's so weird. Anyway.
Let me look at
5
time.is again.
seconds.
Sure, 5 seconds. Ooh.
Not a good one.
15.
That
15,
first one was
15.
really good.
15
15,
seconds.
15, 15.
better clap on my
Much
side.
better.
Swear to God, every time you guys are like, "Oh, that's a bad one," it sounds fucking perfect.
That's how you know it's bad, because the latency is making it sound good. I don't know.
Right. All good claps sound good in America, but bad in Canada.
It's the conversion rate.
Yes, that'll get you every time. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, Art.
Great.
All right.
I was gonna say, as a follow up to the actor thing from before, I just feel like I've come so far since I was the worst person in all of my improv classes.
Aww. I'm sure there was someone in all of those classes who was worse than you were.
I mean, it was an improv class, of course.
Yeah. Just someone who was like annoying, even. Like, you got it.
Oh, I definitely wasn't the most annoying person, and I don't want to even consider that. That's a high bar.
Was that Chris O'Donnell? Was that who it was? Was that the most annoying person?
It wasn't. That's the wrong. It's the other famous guy.
Chris O'Donnell too?
Chris O'Donnell was Robin, right?
Yeah. Were you not?
No, I had the guy from Sliders.
Jerry O'Connell.
Jerry O'Connell.
What?
Oh, right. They're different people.
Yeah.
Jerry O'Connell also has a
You
brother.
cannot slip some Sliders shit past me. I will get it every time.
He was like one of my first Hollywood crushes.
Oh no, Allie.
Was that because
Was it
of
Sliders or
Kangaroo
was it
Jack?
like Kangaroo Jack? Yeah.
Kangaroo
It
Jack.
was Sliders, and then it was also
Stand By Me?
Wasn't there one where he was like, he was like
The one
in
with
Facebook
Tom
or
Cruise,
something?
where-
Jerry Maguire?
No.
Jerry Maguire, right?
No.
Yes.
It's probably Jerry Maguire. Was it Body Shots?
Was it Crossing Jordan?
Was it Kangaroo Jack 2?
It was it was a movie that he was in that I don't
Scream
know.
2?
No. Probably the Mariah Carey Heartbreaker video, but there was also something before.
Piranha 3D. That's actually pretty
No,
late.
that's too recent.
It's
That's
too
too late to be a first.
Instead of me digging through this IMDb.
I think we have to figure this out.
She's amazing, but works super blue.
Anyway,
Nice.
that's it. We're done.
It'd be
That's
really
it.
funny if it was Kangaroo Jack.
It would be great if it was Kangaroo Jack.
Bye,
Scream
everyone.
2.
I said that
We
one.
already guessed that.
All right.
Oh, you said that one?
We're
Oh,
done.
okay.
We're done. We've
Bye.
lost
Okay,
steam.
okay.
Bye.
Bye.